Chapter 654. After about half an hour, the sovereign kings from both sides suddenly raised their heads at the same time. A look of shock flashed past their eyes. Su Jin and Bai Yu heard that Tang Tian had returned and chased after him. Tang Cho said solemnly, "This subordinate will definitely surpass Master. I wonder if you can introduce me?" Bai Yu had a look of admiration. "Such a master. If this Bai can learn a thing or two from him, I will die without regrets." Thousands of light traces converged into a dazzling vortex. Over 100 tribes were split into two distinct armies, facing each other in the vast snow plains. In the savage continent, the frequency of wars was much higher than other places in the Sacred Saint Galaxy. The atmosphere of reverence for strength, the harsh environment, caused the battles between the tribes to be endless. On the big and small altars, the various shamans of the various tribes were waving the bone staffs in their hands with all their might, their expressions fanatical, as though they had gone mad. The heroic spirits that kept surging out, all of them were dressed in the same uniform. Their formations were strict. It was obvious that they were an army. Countless of light traces that resembled shooting stars appeared in the sky. It was the light produced by the friction between the high-speed energy flow and the air. They converged from all directions and surged into the formless vortex in the sky above the snow plains. A figure slowly walked out from the light door, followed by another. An unending stream of figures slowly walked out from the light door like a tide. Tang Tian and Bing were startled at the same time. They had thought that the vast star continent would offer a huge price, but they never thought that the vast star continent would be willing to pay such a price. The sudden trembling sound converged like a tide, causing their scalps to go numb. Tai Ji and Ah Si Ming's faces changed. The power that was congealing in the sky, in a short period of time, rapidly expanded like a terrifying storm. Even the two sovereign kings who were as strong as them could not help but feel fear. In the sky, a young lady dressed in a military uniform with a Perseus crown on her head. Her long black hair fluttered in the wind as she looked down at the ground. Su Jin and Bai Yu were accompanied by Crane as they toured the Sword Forest stronghold. Crane, who was born from an aristocratic family, treated people impeccably, and such matters were usually handled by him. The eye of the vortex became even more dazzling. The terrifying undulation surged out like a gigantic wave. "We hope to form an alliance with the Shan continent. I wonder what continent's opinion is?" Yang Ziqing did not beat around the bush and directly stated his intentions. To the current vast star continent, time was the most important. To waste time on probing was instead. The savage continent worshipped power the most, and every imperial court was built by a sovereign king. Every sovereign king was a peerless expert. In this savage land, it was impossible to establish a royal court by relying solely on intelligence. Suddenly, a dark green figure appeared at the light door. The two sovereign kings were stunned. Crane laughed. "Our chief mechanical engineer." Altars of various sizes were placed at the forefront of both teams. The raging flames caused the metal pot, which was the size of a house, to float in midair. The flesh and blood of various desolate beasts were tumbling in the metal pot. A bright red blood mist condensed above the metal pot and did not dissipate. The Iron Mountain Royal Palace, which was located in the south of the Aba Mountain, and the North Snow Royal Palace, which was located in the vast snowland, had been in constant conflict in recent years. Finally, both sides lost all patience. They brought their respective tribes to fight to the death. However, right now, the sacrificial power of the various tribes was actually gathering and merging in the sky, not differentiating between friend and foe. Jishan and the other scouts all quietened down. The accompanying soldiers were emitting killing intent, causing them to tremble in fear. When the fleet sailed into the Shan continent, they discovered the warships with the Su-Ji worldwide commerce and by family insignia, causing the scouts' faces to change. On the snow plains, only the two sovereign kings stood there tenaciously, resisting against the astonishing power. Under every imperial court, there were hundreds of tribes, and every tribe worshipped different totems, and the sacrificial ceremony was also different. The sacrificial ceremony before the battle was the most common form of war in the savage continent. It could greatly stimulate the power in the soldiers' bodies. The Sword Forest stronghold had undergone a huge transformation and was brand new. In the past few days, Xieyuan and the rest had undergone a complete transformation, which he saw for himself. The return of Tang Tian's troops had greatly intimidated the small fry. Alliance? Sure. Bing puffed out a smoke ring and said, "Let's see what price your continent is willing to offer." That is truly a pity. Bai Yu's face was filled with regret, but his mind was thinking of thousands of thoughts. Yang Ziqing already had a plan in his mind, and without hesitation, "We are willing to give the pontoon bridge to the continent lord." The bright vortex in the sky stopped spinning. It was like a light door embedded in the sky. "Master," Tang Cho bowed to Bing. In such a huge battle, the sacrificial ceremony before the battle was extremely common, and the sacrificial power that was released from the altars on both sides should be used to fight in the sky, and that was the prelude to the battle. Heroic spirit. Su Jin, who was beside Bai Yu, was in a daze. He had not regained his senses from the black, desolate beach. The black, desolate beach was endless and contained an astonishing amount of wealth. Even if he had never lacked money, but in the sea of black gold, he still felt lost. One of the tribe warriors suddenly realized that the weapon in his hand was trembling, as though it was trying to struggle out of his hand. The scalp-numbing trembling suddenly disappeared, and the entire place became quiet. Suddenly, the two sovereign kings' eyes dilated. They had never encountered such a strange situation before. The two sovereign kings were shocked and looked at the sky in a daze. Iron Mountain King Taiji, North Snow King Si Ming. They were both powerful martial artists, and their sensitivity towards energy far exceeded ordinary people. Wave after wave of bizarre energy rose from the altars and converged in the sky above the snow plains. "Then you have to work hard." Bing laughed out loud, not angry at all. "I am sorry, she is not here," Crane said apologetically. The scale of the heroic spirit army in front of them had already caused the two sovereign kings to feel their scalps go numb. Heroic spirit army. Then when they were alive, wouldn't they be a sovereign king army? Buzz. There were actually so many heroic spirits. That was the pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light, the one and only pontoon bridge. Boss's power was truly unfathomable. The two sovereign kings were completely shocked. One after another, the heroic spirits walked out of the light door in an endless stream, as though behind the light door, there was an endless stream of heroic spirits. Buzz, buzz, buzz. It must be known there were two conditions to form a heroic spirit in the savage continent. One was to have an intense obsession, and the other was to be sufficiently strong when they were alive. In the savage continent, only after the sovereign king's death could a heroic spirit be formed. Truly too young, Xieyuan and the rest did not dare to breathe. In their hearts, Tang Cho was already a god of war. They never thought that the ordinary-looking spirit dyad in front of them would actually cause Master Tang Cho to address him as Master, causing them to feel a sense of admiration. The feeling of fleecing a rich family was always wonderful. The Suji Worldwide Commerce was one of the few weapons merchants in the world, while the Bai family was similarly a rich family with deep roots in the southern region. For the small Shan continent to actually have connections with these two powerhouses, no one dared to act blindly without thinking. Very quickly, the sorcerers on the altar sensed that something was amiss. It was as though there was an invisible vortex in the sky, frantically absorbing their power. They could feel the power of the altar beneath their feet surging into the sky at an astonishing speed. "Well done." Bing puffed out a smoke ring and nodded his head in satisfaction. "At this rate, I reckon that in no time, you will surpass me." It was Yang Ziqing's first time meeting Tang Tian, the true ruler of the Shan continent. Heroic Spirit Army. Bai Yu was a famed general, but it was his first time seeing such cruel and harsh training. What he did not expect was that Xieyuan and the rest persevered. Ji Shan and Lei Ming had a tacit understanding and did not mention the matter of seizing the Shan continent together. The two of them immediately sent the information back, and then did the hard work in peace. Ingenuity. Bayou is full of praises. I have seen all sorts of strongholds, but this is the first time I have seen such ingenuity in a stronghold. I wonder who was the one who created this stronghold. Bayou suddenly pitted the vast star continent, with such a fierce tiger sleeping beside them. They were probably unable to eat or sleep well. Mengnan was a fierce tiger. His claws and teeth had already formed. This was also the reason why other people thought that the savage continent was uncivilized. Bayou thought about it. Since there was the word chief, it meant that there was more than one. Outside of the savage continent, people called them spirit dyads, but in the savage continent, they were called heroic spirits. Heroic spirits were thought to be the protection of their ancestors, and people who could obtain heroic spirits would be able to obtain the protection of their ancestors. Tai Ji and Ah Si Ming were much more knowledgeable than ordinary people, and they knew that heroic spirits were in fact the strong martial artists that died and were born from their intense obsession. In other places, heroic spirits, which were spirit dyads, could be bought. But at the moment, they were looking at the sky with gloomy expressions as they felt that something was amiss. The vast star continent was currently like a house with holes in the wind and rain, swaying in the wind and rain. But the Shan continent was brimming with vitality and had the momentum to soar into the sky. From the start, Bayou looked favorably upon Mengnan and thought that he had the potential to become an ally of the Bai family. As time passed, Mengnan gave him more and more surprises and gradually revealed his strength, causing Bayou to have no choice but to reevaluate the relationship between them. From the corner of his eyes, he saw Bing, who was beside Tang Tian, puffing out a cloud of smoke. In front of this guy, any tricks were meaningless. Yang Ziqing had fought with Bing before and was extremely clear on how difficult it was to deal with Bing. This war would deeply affect the entire northern region of the savage continent. Yang Ziqing was shocked in his heart, but he did not dare to look down on the other party. To be able to accomplish such a feat at such a young age, who had the qualifications to look down on him. He was overwhelmed with shock. He immediately turned to look, and in his eyes, all of the weapons were trembling. But what's going on? Bayou's guess was right. Yang Ziqing and He Si Ji were unable to eat or sleep in peace. They realized that they had underestimated the Shan continent. Yang Ziqing's plan was once again overturned, because the old general He Si Ji had clearly told him that the Shan continent was stronger than the vast star continent. In the extreme north of the savage continent, a huge battle was happening. The intimidating and powerful might caused all of the brave warriors to be overwhelmed with shock. Plop, someone's knees went soft and they knelt on the ground, as though there was a ripple spreading out. The two armies that were facing each other all knelt down. They buried their faces in the snow, their hearts filled with reverence and fear. Bayou was also deeply shocked, but he was not shocked by the desolate black rocks, but by the sword forest stronghold. Chapter 655. So, Bing asked, "Nothing, I've finally thought it through." Tang Tian counted with his fingers. "How many people do we have? Even if we move all the people from Ursa Major constellation, it will only be equivalent to a bigger continent. But compared to the honorable Marshall continent, we are still lacking. If we wait for our continents to fight and strengthen ourselves, how long will that take?" News from Three Spirit City. Screw is awake. When there are enough benefits, we will naturally be willing to take the risk. He Si Ji was expressionless. A blaze lit up in He Si Ji's eyes. "That is our only choice. Let Mengnan fight with them. We will hide at the back. We are recovering. While they are expending their energy, when the time is ripe, we can definitely take back everything that belongs to us." The vast star continent controlled the most important section, which connected the Ming continent, Yuan continent, and Lehigh continent, and was the golden section of the pontoon bridge. These three continents were the top 20 continents in the southern region. Adding the vast star continent, the four continents were connected, and their value was self-evident. Tang Tian also regained his senses. The person who thought of the plan was extremely powerful, but the vast star continent Lord Determination made him feel admiration. This piece of meat was extremely delicious, but if he wanted to swallow it, it would most likely cause him to die. Suddenly, Tang Tian gasped. If they took over the Flying Horn continent, they only needed to send an army to guard it, and they would be able to pose a huge threat to the vast star continent. What we need the pontoon bridge for? Bing sneered. For money? Do you think we lack money? Yang Ziqing laughed bitterly. If we do not give it to your continent, we will not be able to keep it. In truth, recently the pontoon bridge has been under attack, and we are already unable to defend it. If your side is willing to form an alliance, then it has to be fast. No one knows how long we can last. My side's condition is simple: to exchange the pontoon bridge for the Flying Horn continent. Pah, duh. The cigarette in Bing's hand dropped to the ground. This plan was suggested by the old general He Cg. After careful consideration, he realized that although the Shang continent was strong, but the long defensive line would cause their armies to be unable to cope. It was foreseeable that the battles between the Shang continent and the other continents would continue, and both sides' strength would continue to be depleted. The two of them looked at each other and couldn't help but burst into laughter. Bing looked at Tang Tian as though he had seen a ghost. If one were to ask what was the most valuable thing in the vast star continent, it would definitely be the pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light. Bing looked at Tang Tian in a daze and said after a while, "You thought of this yourself?" "That's right." Yang Ziqing's face regained its determination. "We can definitely take back the pontoon bridge. Losing the burden of the pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light and shrinking the defensive line, their situation would stabilize. The wealth that they had accumulated over the years would allow them to recover their vitality and even become stronger. At that time, they could effortlessly seize the pontoon bridge and flatten the surrounding continents." "What?" Bing's eyes widened and became furious. "Tens of billions? I'm dirt poor here, and you actually spent tens of billions to kill a bunch of hooligans. How infuriating." The reason why the vast star continent was able to accumulate so much wealth was because they controlled the pontoon bridge. In other words, the pontoon bridge was the foundation of the vast star continent. So, when Tang Tian and Bing heard that the vast star continent had taken out the pontoon bridge as a bargaining chip, they were stunned. Even if the two of them wanted to slaughter the vast star continent, they did not dare to have any ideas about the pontoon bridge, but they did not expect the other party to take it out. Advancing along the pontoon bridge was like advancing in the continent. "That's why I bribed everyone," Tang Tian said happily. "I dealt with the Golden Rose and White Sands and only spent a few billions to destroy them. I want the pontoon bridge." Tang Tian suddenly said, "But that Flying Point continent, you guys can go and take it yourselves. Defending the pontoon bridge is not an easy task for us. I believe you guys do not wish for us to be unable to stop the other continents, right?" Yang Ziqing and He Cg were satisfied and left. Advancing along the pontoon bridge not only meant that it was safer, but it was also faster and cheaper. "What if we do not swallow it?" Tang Tian's words were shocking. "We can bribe them, and the honorable Marshall continent can too," Bing said. "Are you possessed by something?" Bing circled around Tang Tian. Bing sneered. "Do you still think such a squandering action is honorable? I'll scrape you first." The two of them were filled with sorrow to the vast star continent. Losing the pontoon bridge meant that they had lost their main source of income, and for a long time after that, they would have to live a bitter life. What made the two of them even sadder was that the powerful and prosperous vast star continent, in the blink of an eye, was at a dead end. Seeing Bing's shocked expression that he even forgot to smoke, Tang Tian's heart was overflowing with joy, and he said happily, "How is it? Do you think I'm powerful?" A scholar who has been away for 3 days will look at each other by scraping the wood. You need to scrape the wood before you can see it, understand? Don't bother about such a small matter. Tang Tian laughed. "I was just thinking, why don't we use this method to deal with the honorable Marshall continent? There are many people who hate them. If we can't bribe them with money, then we can use something to bribe them. The pontoon bridge will do. If we bribe everyone, the honorable Marshall continent will not be able to take it." Yang Ziqing was calm. "Although this is the first time I'm meeting the Continent Lord, but the Continent Lord has great ambitions, and I believe that the Continent Lord will be able to make the right decision." The southern region had a total of 3 pontoon bridges in the Sea of Light, and every one of them were the main arteries of the southern region. The pontoon bridge that the vast star continent was on was the longest and connected the 24 continents. The Bai family and the White Sands continent. Tang Tian said, as long as we give them a share, they will definitely be willing. Tang Tian glanced at Bing. He thought in his heart, this guy is really good at acting. He doesn't lack money? Who is the first person to ask for money? You're enlightened. Bing clicked his tongue in wonder, but he had to admit that it was a good idea, and became excited. That's right, an alliance. We need to form an alliance. It is difficult to swallow the pontoon bridge alone, but if everyone swallows it together, it will be much easier. Not bad, not bad. A good idea. But we need to find a middleman with some weight, so that we can convince the other continents. Flying Horn Continent? Bing immediately understood the other party's intentions and sneered. Your side truly has a good plan. To give up on the pontoon bridge that could not be defended, we have to help you block the majority of the pressure, and then use the Flying Horn Continent to defend the main road. This will truly be impregnable. There were many advantages, but there were also many disadvantages. The long defensive line to any powerhouse was a heavy burden. The vast star continent looked as though they were defeated by Tang Tian and the rest, but in truth, from a certain perspective, they were dragged down by the pontoon bridge. The vast star continent had the most open terrain, and the most difficult to defend was the area where the pontoon bridge connected. Although the vast star continent had to endure the pain and cut off a piece of meat, but the situation became safer. After taking over the pontoon bridge, the first problem they faced was how to defend the pontoon bridge, and they did not have the time to find trouble with the vast star continent. Bing was about to bring the cigarette to his mouth and asked casually, "What's wrong? What's with that expression?" Tang Tian said unhappily. The pontoon bridge was not only the lifeline of transportation, but the cities along the way were all important cities with large populations. To the current Shang continent, population was equally important. In the room, Bing laughed bitterly. It's good meat, but it's too fat. We can't swallow it. Not swallow. Bing was startled. The pontoon bridge is worth your continent spending some effort. Yang Ziqing did not give in, and said calmly, although it is fated to fall, but if not for the alliance, it would not have landed in your hands. To your side, this is the only chance to obtain the pontoon bridge. The Flying Horn Continent was a small continent like the Shang continent, and guarded the other side of the vast star continent's waterway. But because the vast star continent relied more on the pontoon bridge and did not use the waterway much, the Flying Horn Continent had always been neglected, and there was a group of pirates there. No, they won't. Tang Tian shook his head. For example, we will take out the pontoon bridge, but will the Honorable Marshall Continent? The Honorable Marshall Continent's ambition is to unify the sacred Saint Galaxy, and they are the natural enemies of the other continents. They want other people to obey them, to be their subordinates and servants, to steal the wealth of other continents. We are not. We do not have any ambitions toward the sacred Saint Galaxy. We just want to be friends with them. I will give my friends some benefits, and let my friends help me. That is not a problem. I will give others some benefits, and let them be my servants, but no one is willing. Yang Ziqing took a deep breath. We have made the best choice. Why do we come to the sacred Saint Galaxy? Tang Tian continued. We are not here to earn money, nor are we here to fight for territory. We are here to get rid of our enemy, the Honorable Marshall Continent. Since it's like that, why do we need to swallow it? We can take it out and share with everyone. That way we will all be on the same side. And we can even provide them with star treasures and whatnot. As long as they help us fight against the Honorable Marshall Continent, they hate them too. Walking out of the room, Yang Ziqing was in a daze. I never thought that they would actually agree. Tang Tian and Bing looked at each other and saw the suspicion in each other's eyes. Bing's expression became calm again. It was just a surprise. When Yang Ziqing said that, he felt an indescribable sense of relief. Seeing their suspicious looks, he raised his eyebrows. Don't tell me you think that the price tag is not high enough? Although people already knew how to build ships to travel through the sea of energy, but it still meant that there were risks and high costs. The dangerous sea of energy had many unknown dangers, and every year, countless of fleets would perish in the sea of energy. To the people of the Sacred Saint Galaxy, their history was the history of fighting against the sea of energy. That's right, Tang Tian said with a matter-of-fact face. All right. Yang Ziqing agreed. The Flying Horn continent was just an extra. As long as the armies of the vast star continent retreated from the long defensive line, they would have sufficient strength to attack and occupy the Flying Horn continent. In the Sacred Saint Galaxy, to travel between continents, one needed to pass through the sea of energy. Every continent was like a bubble in the vast sea of energy. In between some of the bubbles, there would be a special energy belt. This energy belt was extremely stable and was able to isolate the seawater in the sea of energy, and that was the pontoon bridge. Chapter 656. Suddenly, she thought of something and hesitated, but still gathered her courage. Master, some time ago, the people from Taurus constellation came to find Big Sister. I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving. If I leave, who will help you? A full 10,000 years. She could imagine Big Sister could only go to sleep angrily for the sake of the mechanical weapons laboratory, and could not help but cover her mouth and chuckle. In Bing's blurry eyes, the blurry and skinny figure stopped. A hoarse and sobbing voice came out from behind Screw, causing Screw to be suspicious. Bing felt as though his heart was being fiercely pulled. The tears in Bing's eyes flowed like water from a broken dam, pouring down in torrents. Screw, who had walked to the door, was so blurry in Bing's eyes that he could only see a back view, a skinny, stubborn back view. Tang Tian waved his hands, stopping Pai Pa from speaking, and laughed sinisterly. Who are the armies that have no missions now? Let Tang Cho pick a few armies, and accompany Sai Lei to Taurus constellation. Don't be anxious. I haven't gone back for so many years. I have to take a good look. When this sentence came out of his mouth, Bing almost choked with sobs. It was as if Bing could see the battlefield filled with the flames of war, the mountain of damaged mechanical weapons surrounding Screw. He was extremely tired. His hands were trembling. His voice was trembling. He was afraid. He was in despair. He was worried for everyone. Even if your memories are blank, even if you come back to this world, even if you can't recognize us, even if this is fate. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. After dying for 10,000 years, you will definitely leave something in your soul. What did you bring back this time? What? You didn't bring anything? Then what's the use of you? In the future, you have to bring more materials from the Sacred Saint Galaxy. Oh, you have already hooked up with the weapons merchants from the Sacred Saint Galaxy? That's great. Ask them for a list of materials, and send a copy of all the materials over. Oh, it doesn't matter if you come or not. It was time for him to settle this score. The joints are severely damaged. Give me the third joint. Everyone move faster. Hold on, don't fall. A chop landed on Sai Lei's neck, and Sai Lei's voice stopped abruptly. Tang Tian used one hand to grab the unconscious Sai Lei and gently placed him on the sofa at the corner of the laboratory. Yes, Screw answered subconsciously. He raised his head, and what entered his vision was an unfamiliar face. But for some reason, he felt that this face was strangely familiar. He saw his own skinny reflection in the other party's eyes. Who are you? Battlefield. Screw's skinny face was filled with determination. Leader, don't die. Alexine, don't die. Little guy, don't die. He stared blankly at the other, and the other stared back at him blankly. Battlefield. Bing mumbled. Long Shou Jing's temperament was indifferent. Although he looked ordinary, he was soft on the outside and hard on the inside. For the sake of persuading Tang Tian all those years ago, he was even willing to put on a death remonstrance, and this clearly showed how staunch and unyielding his heart was. Yes, Big Sis is too desperate. We all tried to persuade her, but she didn't listen. No one dared to stop her. Pai Pa whispered, "Where are you going?" Bing looked at the familiar face. All the gray memories became extremely fresh, and an unspeakable pain and sorrow spread throughout his entire body. Bing looked up, letting the tears flow down his face. He raised both of his arms, just like 10,000 years ago. He roared, "Southern Cross Army, advance." Another example was Chun Zi Lin. Under Adrian's suggestion, he became Ah Luan's assistant. The brave and fierce Aluin and the calm and collected Chinzi Lin immediately became a golden combination. Pai Pa was in awe of Tang Tian. Master's method is too brilliant. Pai Pa looked at Sai Lei timidly and said softly, 15 days. Recently, there has been a huge progress in researching the Sacred Saint Galaxy materials. The Sacred Saint Galaxy materials are fundamentally different from Heaven's Road materials. Do you know what is the most important characteristic of our materials? Spirit. That's right, it's spirits. What about the Sacred Saint Galaxy materials? They do not have spirits, but they innately contain some laws. You definitely want to ask why? Because the environment they are in is extremely dense with energy. That's right, laws and energy do not have any intrinsic connection, but in places with abundant energy, laws are more easily formed. Energy is like water, laws are like fish. Bing hated himself for being weak. His tears could not stop. He did not want to cry. But why can't I stop crying? Every sentence, Bing had to use all of his strength. From seeing Screw in the ice coffin with his own eyes, to hearing his screams, every sentence was deeply imprinted in Bing's mind. Back at Three Spirit City, Tang Cho immediately went into work mode. The scope of his work was mainly in Heaven's Road. There were so many armies under Ursa Major Constellation, and without one person leading the entire situation, it would definitely not work. As for the Sacred Saint Galaxy, with Bing there, he did not need to worry. How can I forget? The first thing Tang Cho did when he returned was to check on the recent training of the various armies. Pai Pa nodded her head. Yes, they definitely want to take the chance to detain Big Sister. Tang Tian's face became cold. They want Sai Lei to return to Taurus Constellation to take a look? Every name on the list made Tang Cho feel proud. But he was in a difficult position. Who should he pick? Sleep? Why do I need to sleep? Sai Lei waved her arms excitedly. Such a huge discovery, such a grand time. The greatest Saint armor in the history of mechanical machinery is right in front of me. At such a time, to waste time on sleeping, that is squandering it. What a waste. The current Three Spirits City had already developed into one of the largest cities in the Spirit region. To ensure safety, at any time, there would always be 2 armies stationed. The size of the barracks in Three Spirits City was astonishing. Bang! The armies stationed in Three Spirits City were not fixed, but rotated regularly, which made it convenient for Tang Cho to observe from a close distance. The armies of Ursa Major Constellation were all young. They had enviable potential, but they still required a large amount of harsh training to raise their own fighting capabilities. You got the wrong person. Screw shook his head. He stood up. Please let me leave. They said that only you can let me leave. Suddenly, Tang Tian scoffed. Who's in charge of the budget now? Hand Tao? That's right. Why would Master watch Big Sister get bullied? But when Master was angry just now, it was truly scary. It's fine. Sai Lei has left Taurus Constellation for so long. She should go back and take a look. Tang Tian's tone was cold. Because you have been shouting those words for 10,000 years. Screw shook his head. You don't look small. After walking out of the room and carefully closing the door, Tang Tian asked Pai Pa, is she always like that? I'm a little brat. Bing tried his best to control his emotions. He forcefully pulled the corners of his mouth, but it was uglier than crying. Master. Pai Pa was shocked. She never thought that the Master would actually agree to Big Sister returning to Taurus Constellation, and she regretted speaking out of turn. Tang Tian was enraged. For a little girl to be chased out from her family since young, it was needless to say that her days were tough. Why? Why is it like this? Tang Cho doted on Xiao Wu, and, after Adrian's tutelage, he was displaying the mannerisms of a great general. In terms of teaching students, Tang Cho had to admit that he was still lacking compared to Adrian. Tang Tian had not been to Three Spirit City for a long time, and all of a sudden, countless of things were happening, but no one was able to snatch Tang Tian away from Big Sister Sai Lei. Screw felt as though he was struck by lightning. You're truly too stupid. You still don't understand, even after talking till here? Mechanical spirit weapons. Think about it. As long as you combine the 2 materials, the martial spirit can control the laws, How wonderful is that? Silei, want to create the strongest mechanical weapon in history, Saint Armor. That name is very powerful, right? Upon receiving Tang Tian's orders, Tang Chou flipped through the reports sent by the various armies. Tang Tian had set the rule, and Long Shou Jing would complete it without any hesitation. Haha, the two of them are practically natural enemies. Screw, who was walking out, stopped in his tracks, the suspicion on his face becoming denser and denser. All of the messy words made him feel a sense of familiarity, as though it was his body's instincts. So weird. Haha, that's good. Tang Tian said happily. From today onwards, the budget of the mechanical laboratory will be directly linked to Lei's sleeping time. For every hour she sleeps less, 5% of the budget will be deducted. Screw. Wrench, give me a wrench. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Fucking move faster. They pestered and pestered, wanting Big Sister to go back and take a look, but when she became impatient, they said some unpleasant words, causing Big Sister to cry from anger. Pai Pa said angrily, "They're too much. They were the ones who let Big Sister down, and now they are playing such tricks. If not for Big Sister's face, everyone would want to teach them a lesson." He was actually very timid and afraid of death. Bing's nose turned sour, and his voice became hoarse. Screw. Don't you remember this brat? Don't you remember Captain? Don't you remember, Xian? Don't you remember us? I want to save my comrades. They're in danger. Screw walked out without turning back. I cannot let them die. Yes. Pai Pa felt awkward, although Master Shou Jing's nickname Hand Towel had long spread, but hearing it from Tang Tian's mouth, Pai Pa still felt pity for him. He was just a mechanical engineer. Oh, Tang Tian recalled. Silei seemed to be from the Taurus constellation. Very familiar, right? Very familiar, right? Screw, you definitely feel that it is very familiar, right? Pai Pa was startled. Her face immediately filled with joy. She anxiously turned and ran. I will go find Master Tang Chou. Screw's footsteps became slower and slower. Tang Tian also had a headache. Big Sister Silei's reputation was not just for show. To even shout at him, no one else would be able to control her. Silei's state of mind had an indescribable excitement. Upon seeing Tang Tian, she immediately attacked him. Tang Tian looked at the disheveled Silei's face that was flushed red and frowned. He turned and asked Pai Pa, "How long has it been since you slept?" "Definitely. You haven't slept for 15 days?" Tang Tian frowned even deeper. Ursa Major constellation was currently flourishing, especially among the youths. Many of them with talent had started to reveal their extraordinary talents. But the one with the most credit was Adrian, the teacher with the title of Hunter. Screw's footsteps slowed down. The words that came out of nowhere were somewhat familiar. Chapter 657. These are the keys to all the strongholds from now on. They belong to all of you. I wish you all the best. Bing took a deep breath. He knew that the war had just begun. When the fleet arrived at the pontoon bridge, they encountered a small-scale battle. The pirates were quickly wiped out, but it showed how bad the situation was for the pontoon bridge. Although he was unfamiliar with everyone, Screw could feel the joy and anticipation in his heart. It had to be said, the Shang continent's army was strong. The perseverance and hard work of the soldiers were true elites and left a deep impression on him. Just like now, the soldiers were making use of the time to rest. The fatigue brought about by the long-distance training was not something that could be eliminated in a day or two, but no one had any complaints. Bai Yu and Su Jin ran over to Tang Tian to inquire about the situation. For such a large-scale movement of troops in the middle of the night, it was obvious that something big had happened. Many of them had a premonition that maybe an unprecedented storm was brewing. Bing told them many things about the Southern Cross Army in the past, about Exant, about the commander, and about how he still owed Bing a set of mechanical weapons. Screw then knew that he was a mechanical engineer in the past, knew that he was a chatterbox, knew that he liked to bootlick. Even the cigarette in Bing's hand was kept by him to curry favor with the commander, and knew of the sun and the wind at that time, and knew of the final battle. Knowing that Bing had boarded the pontoon bridge, and that the vast Star Continent's army had retreated, Tang Tian immediately took action. He found Bai Yu, and without hiding anything, he revealed the entire plan of the pontoon bridge. In truth, the situation of the pontoon bridge was even more serious than what CG had described. Tang Tian did not care about it. He and the Suji Worldwide Commerce were happy working together. The reason why he did not choose the Suji Worldwide Commerce was because they were weapons merchants and not a powerhouse of a continent. Su Jin, who received the news, became extremely excited. He knew that if the matter was successful, the merit would allow him to become the next patriarch of the Suji Worldwide Commerce. But those who were observant would be able to sense the countless undercurrents moving beneath the surface. Maybe one day, I will think of everyone. To the vast star continent, the long defense line of the pontoon bridge was a huge burden, and it was the same for the Shan continent. Before Bing completely took over the pontoon bridge, they could not leak any information. Once the vast star continent knew of their true intentions, then the plan would definitely fail, and the vast star continent could even carry out the plan themselves. The war between the Honorable Martial Alliance and the Leo constellation was still ongoing. Both parties were in a killing frenzy and were destined to fight to the death. The battle between the two giants deeply influenced and dominated the structure of Heaven's Road. CG did not step onto the pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light, as it would make him feel sad, as it symbolized the fall of the vast star continent. He brought a few crippled armies and retreated to the back. She silently watched the spirit general, who was as clumsy as a child. Bing's back view disappeared from his vision, and Screw retracted his gaze. Bing said, he had already found IXIN. Bing said, they will definitely be able to find the commander. Bing said, everyone will meet again and fight side by side, just like before. With that, adding the Shan continent, White Sands by family, and Suji Worldwide Commerce, the alliance would be made up of 8 families. CG was slightly regretful, but he did not blame himself. A commander of this level was something that could only be found by luck and could not be obtained through nurturing. That was the key to success or failure. On the whole, the situation did not change much. The Sagittarius Empress was still in the palace. The Cancer constellation's biggest news was the appearance of 3 gold star treasures, and the Aquarius constellation was still earning the crystal coins of Heaven's Road. Even the tyrannical Ursa major constellation that had appeared out of nowhere was extremely quiet. What the vast star continent wanted to make use of was Tang Tian's greed. Just by looking at the name list, Baiyu was sure that if the alliance was formed, it would definitely become the strongest alliance in the entire southern region. White Sands continent, Ming continent, Yuan continent, Lehigh continent, there were 4 of the top 20 continents in the southern region, and the White Sands continent was in the top 10. Adding the Bai family, who was a rich and powerful aristocratic family. The Suji Worldwide Commerce, who was one of the top 5 weapon merchants. The ferocious tiger that was the Shan continent. The strength of the alliance was extremely strong. All of these did not matter to Tang Tian, because he had an extremely urgent matter in front of him, the pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light. It would become the biggest alliance in the southern region. The vast star continent's guards who had long received the order were waiting for them. That very night, the few armies that had just arrived in the Shan continent had regrouped. They were led by Bing, and under the guidance of the vast star continent, they would take over the pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light. The fleet was sailing at full speed, and after sailing at full speed for a long period of time, it was extremely harmful to the ships, but at that time, no one felt heartache for the few transport ships. The middlemen had also increased from 2 to 3, and they were going to look for the continent lords of the other continents to discuss about the matter. Do you need a rest? CG's face was filled with fatigue. Dealing with Bing's endless questions was not an easy task for him at his age. In 3 Spirit City, Screw watched Bing's leaving back without saying a word. Tang Tian naturally could not say anything, and casually found a reason to deal with it. In this year, the various large constellations in Heaven's Road were not peaceful at all. To fight for the right to speak in the alliance, they needed sufficient allies, and other than the White Sands continent, the Bai family still needed other allies. He suggested to Tang Tian to join the Suji Worldwide Commerce in the banquet. He extended his hand out to stop the few soldiers who wanted to go forward and calm down. No one disturbed him. Everyone knew that Screw had recovered but lost his memories. towards the logistics and maintenance officer who fought till the very last moment. Everyone respected him from the bottom of their hearts. The aggressive Sai Lei was about to find Tang Tian to argue about the ridiculous plan of linking the budget with her sleep, but when she passed by, she coincidentally noticed the scene and stopped. Other than that, another battle had attracted many people's attention. The revived Ophiuchus constellation and Onyx Soul had erupted into a conflict. The former chief mechanical engineer of the Southern Cross Army. Even if your memories have become blank, even after experiencing 10,000 years of destruction, your passion and dreams towards mechanical techniques still have not died, right? The Libra constellation that was extremely close to the Ursa Major constellation was quietly changing. The Aries constellation's internal strife was becoming more and more intense. The Pisces constellation and Capricorn constellation were secretly linking up. All of these official armies were much harder to deal with than the pirates. The densely packed defense setup caused CG to widen his horizons. There were many things that he did not understand. But Bing's strictness left a deep impression on CG. Since Baiyu had placed all of his wealth on the line, naturally he would wholeheartedly help Tang Tian plan. In terms of familiarity with the southern region, Tang Tian and Bing could not even compare to him. Baiyu's breathing immediately became hurried. He was instantly stunned by the meat pie that fell from the sky. That was the pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light, the most important bridge in the southern region, and the most golden location. He turned and walked back. Many sections of the long pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light were engulfed in flames. Screw suddenly stopped. His gaze landed on a pile of scraps in the corner. They were the broken parts of the mechanical spirit weapons, and after a period of time, they would be transported away and reused. The Bai family's only 2 silver-grade armies had urgently gathered, and with the fastest speed, they would head towards the vast star continent. Scorpio constellation that had welcomed the Scorpio King had also welcomed the opportunity to develop quickly. The new Scorpio King had displayed his iron fist and intellect. Sima Xiao, who came from the clan union, in the blink of an eye, had swallowed the clan union until not even the bones were left. Grooming the new members of the clan union, restraining the old men of the Scorpio constellation, Sima Xiao had firmly grasped the Scorpio constellation. But CG's decades of military life was not in vain. He was able to find Bing's biggest weakness with one look, and that was the lack of military strength. The Shan continent's strength was stronger than the vast star continent, but it was not enough to support such a long defensive line. It was a huge hole that Husky had dug for the Shan continent, and he was pleased, but also curious. What will this outstanding commander do? Wave after wave of pirates were like sharks that smelled blood and pounced forward. Many of the pirates were disguised by the surrounding powerhouses, and as long as there was a chance, they would pounce forward and take a bite. His movements were clumsy and out of practice. He squatted down and sized up the strange-looking parts. The sense of familiarity in his heart grew stronger. He hesitated for a moment, but still picked up one of the parts and looked at it. The pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light was extremely urgent. If he did not take the opportunity to take over the pontoon bridge before anyone else succeeded, then the situation would become extremely complicated. If the vast star continent had such an outstanding commander, maybe the situation would be completely different. A secret order was sent to the Bai family at the fastest speed possible. No need. Bing shook his head. From the start, his gaze had never shifted away from the pontoon bridge's defensive map. The Scorpio constellation was able to move freely between the Leo constellation and the Honorable Martial Alliance, and it gained a lot of benefits. To be able to take a step in such an absolutely strategic location, it meant that they had an astonishing amount of wealth and influence. Even the Bai family, the traditional aristocratic family of the southern region, was unable to resist such temptation. Baiyu very quickly picked out the most suitable alliance. The Ming continent, Yuan continent, Lehigh continent, the 3 continents that were directly connected to the pontoon bridge were definitely among them. Although the Rainbow continent was not directly connected to the pontoon bridge, but the distance between them was subtle and could pose a threat to the pontoon bridge, adding on its strength, it was better to include it. Screw listened quietly. He knew that Bing did not lie to him. In his heart, there was a lingering sense of familiarity, an indescribable sorrow, an indescribable longing. It was like a zither string that would always be unknowingly plucked. The indescribable sense of familiarity once again lingered in Screw's heart, and he subconsciously walked over. Following the completion of each and every detail, the long pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light was broken into 3 parts by Bing. Very quickly, the Suji Worldwide Commerce sent back a message. They were willing to join. ECG looked at Bing with admiration. He was an outstanding commander, even more outstanding than him. On the way, Bing continuously asked about the details of the pontoon bridge, and many of the questions, if not for ECG personally guarding the pontoon bridge, he would not even be able to answer them. Baiyu did not hesitate to place a huge bet. He believed that he would never encounter such an opportunity again in his life. Baiyu was extremely shrewd and knew that Tang Tian's generous plan would definitely succeed. At that time, the one controlling the pontoon bridge would definitely be an alliance. It was a race against time. Chapter 658. Although they did not obtain the answer they wanted, but to be able to learn the Aries Spear of Stars, everyone was excited. They had personally witnessed the power of the Aries Spear of Stars. If the army was stationed there, not only could they guard the pontoon bridge, they could also charge into the Sea of Energy through another door and attack. If the enemy attacked the bright symbol stronghold from the direction of the Sea of Energy, then the pontoon bridge would be a natural supply line, allowing them to continuously resupply. The Wei family disciples all revealed looks of shock, and then became ecstatic. And the Sacred Saint Galaxy was filled with energy, and the Yu family spear techniques were like any other martial techniques in the Sacred Saint Galaxy. They did not require any intricate techniques to be able to produce a relatively powerful might. And the dense energy was like a thick layer of snow, at the same time giving them convenience. It also made it harder for them to gain enlightenment on laws. The results of the long-distance training in the Sea of Energy were displayed. Regardless if it was the Swift Army or the Skull Unit, their marching speed was not slow at all, and everyone were extremely calm. Compared to the dangerous Sea of Energy, the inside of the pontoon bridge was like heaven. The pontoon bridge also had its natural enemy, and that was the energy corrosion of the Sea of Energy. The energy corrosion of the Sea of Energy would slowly damage the pontoon bridge, and after a long time, the pontoon bridge would be corroded. Every once in a while, the vast star continent would need to transfer manpower to repair the pontoon bridge. Seeing the excitement of the Yu family disciples, Wei Ting, who was not far away, could not help but ask Crane, "Master Crane, is there really a Sagittarius constellation?" The Yu family disciples all exploded. They initially thought that the name Aries constellation was something their boss casually gave them. Hearing Ling Su's words, could there truly be a place called Aries constellation? Master Crane, what does Sagittarius constellation have to do with these treasures? Everyone became alert. The stronghold in front of them was the most important stronghold of the pontoon bridge, the bright symbol stronghold. Crane smiled. But the Empress of Sagittarius constellation is my mother's older sister. Previously, the vast star continent had gathered a large number of people to attempt to repair the pontoon bridge, but due to the slow repair speed, there were still many gaps. The pontoon bridge was actually an energy belt, and if there were no gaps, it would be difficult to break through. This was the 4th small group of enemies they had defeated along the way. The pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light could be said to be riddled with holes. Small groups of pirates constantly entered through the gaps. Because of the pirates, it had caused the current pontoon bridge to be paralyzed, and no merchant groups dared to use it. It was a pity that this basic coordination was unable to make them a strong army. Bing brought Crane and Ling Su to the group of amateurs. Since they were unable to form an army, then they could display their individual fighting abilities. Is there really a place called Aries constellation? The only one that remained was the Black Arrow warship. It had a powerful speed and could also allow the large fleet to have a certain amount of offensive power. The enemies were defeated, but Bing's expression did not change. Continue forward. The people of the sanctuary were born as saints and seemed to be much stronger than the people of Heaven's Road. But the thin energy instead made it easier for Heaven's rotors to understand laws. And after Heaven's rotors stepped into the saint level, they would be much stronger than the people of the sacred saint galaxy. The current Ling Su's strength and insight were no longer comparable to the past. After pondering for a moment, he roughly understood the situation. The Aries spear of stars originated from the U family, but due to the thinning energy in Heaven's road, the original U family spear technique's might was greatly reduced, and because of that, the original U family spear technique, under the hard work of generations of practitioners, walked a brand new path and gradually formed the Aries spear of stars that pointed directly to the origin of laws. Bing is racing against time. Everyone started asking questions at once. The three most important strongholds of the vast star continent were similar to the bright symbol stronghold. The three strongholds were able to support each other and were able to display an even greater effect. Are Sagittarius constellation's martial techniques the same as our Wei families? The disciples of the five families currently had great improvements in their usage of star treasures. And under Tang Xiao's request, they had grasped a few basic tactics and coordination. Bing noticed the clamoring of the two groups, but did not stop them. Ling Su and Crane's teachings were extremely helpful to the growth of these rascals. Someone was attacking the bright symbol stronghold. No, it's our spirit objects, this Aries constellation. The transport ship's speed was too slow, so Bing immediately gave the order to abandon the ship. Although it would make the soldiers more tired, but at such a crucial time, speed was the most important. Crane could not help but smile, but his heart was secretly moved. His aunt had always hoped that he could inherit Sagittarius constellation, but he still chose Heavenly Crane constellation. In the past, because of the grievances in the past, he did not have any good feelings towards Sagittarius constellation. But now, his horizons were no longer the same as before. His mind was much broader, and the grievances of the previous generation had long faded away. Teacher did not tell me what his surname was. Ling Su's tone was slightly gloomy. Thinking about his teacher, he was somewhat sad, but he quickly struggled out of the sadness. The current him already had the qualifications to make his teacher proud of him. It was truly too similar. His aunt hoped that he could inherit Sagittarius constellation, although it was related to their relationship. But the other reason was that Sagittarius constellation had not produced a young man who could shoulder the responsibility for the past few years. All the disciples of the Wei family and Sagittarius constellation came from the same source. Maybe he could find someone suitable among them. But although these strongholds were closed, they did not have any soldiers to defend them. To the small pirates, it was troublesome, but to the stronger pirates, it was not a problem at all. Even if the pirates did not bring along siege boats, breaking through the strongholds was just a matter of time. Maybe their current usefulness was not obvious, and Bing did not expect them to be of much help, but the young people belonged to the future. As long as they were able to take down the bright symbol stronghold, they would be able to seize the first important node. Maybe I can teach you guys some things about Sagittarius constellation. Crane's smile was like a spring breeze. I know a thing or two about Sagittarius constellation. If the pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light was like a belt of light, then the bright symbol stronghold was like a rock, half embedded in the belt of light, and the other half in the sea of energy. No, Crane said gently. My martial techniques are learned from Heavenly Crane constellation. Time was short. Bing had to occupy the strongholds before the pirates and other powerhouses could react and truly take over the pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light. Teacher Ling, your spear techniques, where did you learn them from? Crane and Ling Su were two strong fighters and could teach them how to fight and how to use star treasures. The disciples of the Wei family were in an uproar. All of them crowded over. Compared to the explosive Ling Su, Crane was more approachable and was more loved by everyone. One was strong before becoming weak, the other weak before becoming strong. These were two completely different environments, forming two completely different paths. My teacher, Ling Su, glanced at them, knowing that the Yu family that the children were in was the origin of Aries constellation. Ling Su was filled with curiosity and tormented them. But very quickly, he was disappointed The spear techniques of the Yu family disciples were not as good as the Aries spear of stars that he trained in. Currently, all these gaps had become the best attacking points for the pirates. Bing did not have the manpower to go and repair them. That's right, all the problems were just a matter of time. Bing was very clear, although the disciples of the five families were strong, but they were undoubtedly amateurs. Out of the five southern islands constellations, Sagittarius constellation and Aries constellation were the two constellations with the strongest offensive capabilities. Cancer was the main defense. Aquarius and Libra specialized in control. Everyone could not help but reveal looks of disappointment. Leaderling, is your teacher surnamed you? Yu Qing subconsciously blurted out, but when he saw Ling Su's smile that was yet not a smile, his face immediately flushed red. The other disciples of the Yu family also had embarrassed expressions. Ling Su's attainments in spear techniques was something that few people in the Yu family could achieve. Wah, that's great. Wei Hao anxiously asked, Master Crane, your martial techniques, are they related to Sagittarius constellation? This was also the difference between Heaven's Road and the Sacred Saint Galaxy. Ling Su's spear techniques were extremely similar to the Yu family spear techniques. This similarity was not just in appearance, but in spirit. Even the taste of the spear techniques were extremely similar. What made them feel even more inconceivable was that Ling Su's attainments in spear techniques were extremely high, causing them to be even more dumbstruck. Once a stronghold was occupied by the pirates, Bing's situation would be extremely bad. The army in his hands was already stretched thin, and without any siege boats, they were unable to attack the strongholds that were occupied. Aries constellation? Our current Aries constellation? He immediately made a decision. Full army charge. Seeing the thoughtful expressions of the Yu family disciples, he immediately gave an answer. Teacher's spear techniques originated from Aries constellation. Then why did Master not inherit Sagittarius constellation? The pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light was not considered wide and was more suitable for individual strength to be displayed. Crane and Ling Su's berserk fighting capabilities were displayed to the fullest in a few battles. Luckily, the terrifying training had sharpened them. Other than the Swift Army, Skull Unit, and the Underworld Continent's demonic mounts, Bing still had a special team that was Crane's Sacred Saint Galaxy Sagittarius constellation and Ling Su's Aries constellation. This was a race against time and needed to be completed in one go. In one go, the two with the strongest attacks were chosen. Yu Qing finally could not hold it in. It was not only him, the other disciples of the Yu family all gathered over, their faces filled with curiosity. Crane, yes. He did not care about their suspicions and directly said, From today onwards, I will teach all of you the Aries spear of stars. Suddenly, Bing's pupils constricted. He saw the light traces of energy passing through the light walls of the pontoon bridge, flickering. Bing did not stop. He did not care about the gaps. It was just a small problem and did not affect the overall situation. What he truly cared about were the strongholds built by the vast star continent on the pontoon bridge. These strongholds were located at the crossroads, and the vast star continent had been continuously reinforcing them for many years and were extremely sturdy. That's great. In front of them, a stronghold could be faintly seen. As long as they took over the strongholds, they would be invincible, and the key was in Bing's hands. Ling Su had a headache. Explaining the problem was complicated, and he hated complicated problems. Chapter 659. Crane was much more gentle. Don't be nervous. Everyone get ready. I will use the guiding arrows later. Do you still remember the sunset arrow that I taught you guys? The warship at the front was like a wild horse that had broken free of its reins, rushing to the other side of the stronghold in one breath. Ingyan shook his head and laughed. These fellows still needed to be trained properly. With such a swarm of bees, what formation was there to speak of? To Ingyan, who had received proper military education, such a scene was truly terrible. But, in the face of victory, the terrible performance was not that glaring. The light barrier of the stronghold trembled violently, causing Ingyan to come back from his thoughts. The stronghold was about to be broken. He was slightly excited. Everyone put in more effort. The stronghold is about to be broken, he snorted. Whoever dares to drag us down, I will pierce them to death. Suddenly, someone inside the warship exclaimed. Right in front of them was an army that was in a tight formation. When he arrived at the bright symbol stronghold, he was shocked to realize that the bright symbol stronghold that was tightly shut did not have any guards. He initially thought that it was a trap, but after a few probing attacks, he was shocked to realize that there was not a single person in the bright symbol stronghold. The shock immediately turned into ecstasy, although he did not understand why. But he knew that it was a heaven-sent opportunity. He immediately gave the order to attack the bright symbol stronghold. As long as they could break through the layer of energy barrier outside the bright symbol stronghold, the strategically important stronghold would fall into his hands. Instigating internal strife in the various continents of the southern region was the main mission of the pirates. Sunset Arrow. The light barrier of the stronghold finally crumbled, transforming into a sky full of broken auras. Bing and his group rushed into the bright symbol stronghold. The arrow aura of the Sunset Arrow had an obvious difference from the other arrow auras. Ordinary arrow auras were shaped like light arrows, and if it was more concentrated, it would be shaped like a long and flat light shuttle. But the shape of the Sunset Arrow was spherical and looked like a dazzling and bright sun. With a clear shout, the bowstrings sounded out, and Ing Yen, who controlled the bright symbol stronghold of the Dichong stronghold, had enough bargaining chips to contend with the various continents. The evening snow ocean in his hand lowered, the blade tip pointing forward. Dazzling spear auras, sword auras, blade auras continuously bombarded the energy barrier of the stronghold. The energy barrier was like a withered branch in the wind, about to be destroyed at any time. Ing Yan's face was flushed red with excitement. The bright symbol stronghold's light aura was on the verge of collapse. Success was right in front of him. The violent explosion and the bewitching bright red flames immediately engulfed the pirates around it. Crane had studied the inheritance of Sagittarius constellation since young, but because of the grievances in the past, he was not willing to train in it. Now that he was leading a group of Sagittarius constellation rookies, he could only pick up an unfamiliar bow and arrow. Inside the honorable Marshall continent, the pirates that they had painstakingly created were called the White Pirates, as white symbolized the light. What is the most valuable thing in the vast star continent? The pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light. But because they did not have spirit domains and could directly control energy, Crane made some changes to this spirit technique so that they could train in it. As long as there were a few more white pirates, Ing Yen had the confidence to contend against the other continents and swallow the vast star continent. At that time, whether it was to be used as a fulcrum for the future conquest of the southern region, or to use it to divide the surrounding continents, he would have too many choices. He would firmly grasp the initiative. Kill. Ing Yen secretly made up her mind that she would have to train well after this battle. The golden crows fell like rain, and the blazing sun covered the sky. What's that? Boom! The crazy cheers of the enemies came from outside the stronghold. Bing glanced at the light barrier that was on the verge of collapse. He immediately judged that it was too late to take over the stronghold's defense. His subordinates were ultimately a group of pirates, and it was impossible to train a group of pirates into a proper army. Pirates were mostly fugitives, they were arrogant and untamed, and once there were too many rules, their resistance would be extremely intense. Although Ing Yen had put in a lot of effort, and their usual performance was just passable, but in their ecstasy, they threw all the things that they had trained to the back of their minds. The shouts outside the stronghold got closer and closer. The morale of the pirates was boosted, and like a swarm of bees, they rushed towards the bright symbol stronghold. Everyone's expression couldn't help but change. Without the protection of the light barrier, the big door was smashed into pieces, and a small-scale warship with a terrifying might rushed in. Behind it was a line of warships. There were also a large number of pirates. They followed the warships and warships, releasing strange shouts. They rushed into the stronghold like a flood. Everyone quieted down. They were all veterans, and even in such an urgent situation, they remained calm and did not panic. The only ones who were nervous were Ling, Su, and Crane's two subordinates. They had never experienced such a huge battle before. Bang! Sure Sen's face did not have any fluctuations. The old subordinates under him were extremely calm. Compared to them, Huiqing and a newly promoted underworld continent demonic mounts were excited, eager to try. To him, the vast star continent should gather their troops and flatten the Shang continent in one go. That way, all the hidden dangers would be strangled in the cradle. But the vast star continent was either overcautious and indecisive, or looked down on the enemy. And every time, they did not send out enough power to destroy the enemy, giving the enemy the chance to create miracles. The Honorable Marshall Continent's pirate plan had been planned for a long time, and every pirate was carefully selected. All of these pirate leaders who had gone through strict training and received complete military education, any one of them had the qualifications to become the commander of the main army of the small continents. All of these outstanding pirate leaders created pirates whose strength far surpassed ordinary pirates. If not for the fact that they did not want to attract the attention of the various continents in the southern region, these pirates could be made even more terrifying. Ing Yan's face was flushed red with excitement, but his mind was extremely fast, and he started to calmly think of his next step. The evening snow ocean cut through the air, and the 500 black blades behind him slashed down at the same time. As one of the Honorable Marshall Continent's pirates that had entered the southern region, Ing Yan's standard was unquestionable. When the vast star continent continuously sent out armies to fight with the Shang continent, he acutely sensed the opportunity. To him, the vast star continent had committed a huge taboo, and that was the tactic of adding oil to the fire. And when a number of pirates near the pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light started to increase, Ing Yan immediately sensed that the battle had begun. Ing Yan, who had a detailed plan, did not hesitate, and led his subordinates straight towards the bright symbol stronghold. The underworld continent's demonic mounts quietly started to charge. They were extremely fast. They did not cause any commotion. Until they reached the front of the enemy, did the pirates wake up from their daze. Not good. The homework that he had done for the past few days without rest was now of great use. After continuously asking He Bing was extremely familiar with the terrain and structures inside the bright symbol stronghold, and in the blink of an eye, he had completed his battle plan. Victory after victory would encourage the enemies, and the enemies would become stronger and more courageous, causing the vast star continent to gradually fall into a passive state. Bang! We need to let the enemies enter the stronghold. Xie Yuan, your position is at the central corridor. Your mission is to block them. Bing spoke quickly. Sure, son. Bring your men to lie in ambush at the far end of the city gate. Do not expose yourselves. As long as the enemies are blocked, your mission is to cut them in half. Remember, follow the city gate and rush back and forth. Aya, the skull unit will lie in ambush at the houses on both sides. You guys will attack from both sides. Ling Su, Crane, your mission is to attack the enemy's warships and frigates. The space inside is limited. If the warships and frigates want to enter, they will not be able to activate the barrier. Crane, you will coordinate with Aya. Your goal is the frigates, destroy them. Ling Su, you will coordinate with Xie Yuan. Your goal is the warships, board the warships. The pirates who were caught off guard were immediately thrown into a mess, blood splattered everywhere, limbs flying everywhere. The blade aura swept across the stern of the warship, causing wood shavings to fly everywhere. Following that, the stern of the warship lit up with a dazzling light aura. Amongst the supplies, there were large amounts of high-concentration energy stones. The dazzling light aura was like an inflated balloon, engulfing the entire warship. Guarding the stronghold, they could attack or retreat. Ling Su glanced at the rookies. Seeing their anxious and uneasy faces, he was somewhat unhappy. Truly a group of rookies. There's an ambush. Ing Yan had specially researched on the big continents of the southern region and was extremely clear of their situation and possible dangers. The surrounding environment of the vast star continent was not safe at all, but it had wealth that made people jealous. As long as the vast star continent revealed a weakness, the surrounding continents would definitely pounce on them. The rest all nodded their heads. To the pirates, this stronghold did not have any meaning. But Yin had his own judgment. If the vast star continent lost control of the pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light, then the pontoon bridge would become the target of all the continents, and at that time, it would truly become a chaotic battlefield. At that time, Yin did not know if the Shan continent could obtain victory, but he still decided to take a gamble. He brought his own pirates and spent a huge amount of effort, making a huge detour, and finally arrived at the vicinity of the pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light and concealed themselves. The vast star continent could not even take care of themselves and did not have the spare energy to send out patrols, so they came without anyone knowing. All the teams anxiously entered their positions, but before they could even stand properly, bang, the light barrier shattered. Because of the short period of time, Crane only taught them a powerful but relatively simple Sagittarius constellation spirit technique. Sunset Arrow was a secret technique of Sagittarius constellation. It was not complicated, but it had an extremely high requirement for true power. But these Sagittarius constellation disciples were saints and did not lack energy. But even so, these Sagittarius constellation disciples, the strongest person could only shoot out 5 sunset arrows, which showed how much energy it consumed. The bright symbol stronghold had fallen into his hands, so he gathered his companions and formed a pirate alliance. He was extremely confident in his own companions. The astonishing synchronization rate caused all of the blade auras to instantly fuse into one, and an unstoppable blade aura current shot into the pirate group. When the vast star continent fell into a disadvantageous position, the first place to be attacked would definitely be the pontoon bridge. The Honorable Marshall continent had detailed information on the pontoon bridge, and after studying it carefully, Yin placed his target on the bright symbol stronghold. Before they could even react, an explosion suddenly sounded out behind them, and a dazzling light aura lit up behind them. Chapter 660. The U Family Spear Technique. No, the Aries Spear of Stars is actually so powerful, so powerful. Ling Su had already imparted the Aries Spear of Stars to them, and nothing could make them more excited than personally witnessing the Aries Spear of Stars performance on the battlefield. "Stop them!" the general screamed. His voice had completely changed. The general that came from the Honorable Marshall continent had never experienced such an intense attack before. All of his previous battle experience seemed to have lost its effect. Withdrawing his spear, the dazzling light aura dissipated. Ignoring the 3 corpses that fell from the sky, Ling Su did not even look and thrusted his spear towards Yuqing Yi. Everyone on the warship quivered. Their faces changed if the enemy were to board the warship. The pirates opened their eyes wide in fear. The intense energy undulation shook their eardrums, causing them to be unable to hear anything. Enveloped by the dazzling white light aura, the battlefield was like a silent image. In the silence, the bewitching tongues of flames that danced on the damaged warship, the blood mist that spewed out was instantly vaporized, and the bodies that were sent flying like fallen leaves. The chaotic battle that lacked space was not beneficial to the Swift Army, and the current chaotic battlefield was too congested. Blindly increasing the number of people attacking could not hasten the progress of the battle. But on the outside, by using a thick formation to slowly push forward, it could give the enemy a huge mental pressure, and thus increase the speed of the enemy's internal collapse. Bang, bang, bang. All of the warships and frigates that rushed into the stronghold were either destroyed or held back. The Skull unit took the chance to rush into the enemy's formation, immediately causing chaos. The 3 of them revealed joy on their faces. They were the strongest in the entire warship. Although the enemy's spear aura was dense, but in their eyes, it was nothing. As long as they broke through the layer of spear auras, it would be time for the enemy to be beheaded. It was foolish, it was weak, but it belonged to him. Ling Su continued to expend energy. He continued to modify it. He continued to ponder. He continued to add more enlightenment into it, as though he was thinking about it more and more. This thought was something they did not dare to imagine. Yin, who was red-eyed, did not notice that behind him, a group was quietly approaching. The silver spear thrusted out calmly. Ambush. The tragic scene played out silently. Tom seemed to have stopped, because that was his heart, because this was his justice. Yu Qingyi was extremely intelligent. He knew that their strength could not be compared to Ling Su, and were even weaker than the elites of the pirates. So they formed groups of 3 to 5 and brandished their spears, stabbing wildly. In the face of such a rogue style of fighting, the pirates had no way to deal with it and were forced to retreat step by step. Justice Origin Pierce. He was really blinded by greed. At this time, he couldn't care about anything else. Like a gambler who had lost everything, he pushed all the remaining chips onto the table. If he didn't rescue the team trapped inside, all his efforts would be in vain, and all his plans would be ruined. Ling Su's long hair fluttered in the wind as he sprinted forward with his spear. His figure was fixed in this glaring white light. A trap. This was a real trap. The other party was prepared. Pu. They could tell that these disciples of the Yu clan had very average battle strength. The reason why they were able to cause so much damage was mostly due to Qingyi. It was because of Yu Qingyi's arrangements that allowed the rookies to display their strength. The flames that soared to the sky caused Yin Yan's heart to bleed. It was the first time he had failed miserably ever since he had led the pirates. Close to 70% of the troops were already trapped inside the bright symbol stronghold. The soldiers who were screaming did not even have time to react when the silver aura exploded in front of them. The boundless silver aura was like a sea of stars, pouncing towards the frigate. Bing watched the battle from afar. Boarding battles were always extremely intense and cruel. Even the trained armies would often feel fear in their hearts. But the reason why Bing dared to use the rookies to board the ship was because of the advantage of ambushing, and the other reason was because of Ling Su. Ling Su took the lead, taking the lead, his orange pupils blazing with flames, his body following his spear. On the warship, facing the incoming enemies, not only did Ling Su not retreat, his fighting intent soared, he bellowed, and like lightning, he rushed into the crowd. Wherever the silver spear pointed, no one was able to block it. Wherever it passed, people would fall and horses would bleed. I really miss you, teacher. His body was like a statue, without the slightest tremble. Only the tip of the spear was trembling at an astonishing frequency. The silver stars scattered down, forming a river of stars. The few figures in his vision got closer and closer, but Ling Su did not notice them. He continued to release the silver aura indifferently. The silver aura continued to converge endlessly, like a sea of stars. One after another, the small suns rose up, forming rays of orange arcs, smashing into the enemy troops. Hold back Ling Su and kill Yu Qingyi. Maybe this is the longing for teacher. Such a longing is something that cannot be dispelled and cannot be given up. This move always made him think of his teacher. He never thought that the opponent would actually endure for so long, to the point of using the empty stronghold as bait. Yin Yan's heart was filled with regret. He was actually so careless, such an important stronghold. How could there be no one guarding it? Yin Yan, who was outside the bright symbol stronghold, was completely crazy. He shouted with all his might, "Charge! Charge in!" But the chaos was exactly what the Skull unit wanted. Although Aya was confident in the rest, but Aya still chose to take the initiative to attack, as the Skull unit was most suited for a chaotic battle. Yin Yan never thought that there would be an ambush inside the bright symbol stronghold. Did my intention to attack be exposed? Ling Su suddenly took a step forward, his silver hair fluttering to his shoulders. The silver light around him, that was like an ocean, suddenly became extremely bright. The Justice Origin Core thorns in Ling Su's hands finally started to release a dangerous aura, and started to possess an extremely terrifying might. Compared to the Skull unit, Xiaoyu and Swift Army was slowly advancing. The Swift Army's formation was extremely sturdy. Like a moving wall, they seemed to be advancing at a slow speed, which was done intentionally by Xiaoyu. The small-scale piercing, infiltration, strangulation The Scully unit were like blades dancing in the air. Every time they waved, they would slice off a piece of flesh. Spears. The Yu family disciples behind Ling Su. Upon seeing Ling Su's valiant performance, all of them had their morale roused and roared as they rushed towards the warship. Inside the bright symbol stronghold, there were continuous explosions, the sky shaking shouts, and even from afar, the flames inside the stronghold caused fear in everyone's hearts. Regiment after regiment of flames blossomed, causing their vision to be filled with dazzling white. It was the first killing technique that Ling Su had comprehended, and in theory, it was no longer suitable for the current Ling Su. But Ling Su was not willing to give it up. He had a fiery temper, but his heart had an incomprehensible gentleness. 2 spears thrusted out, and 2 bloody holes appeared on the backs of 2 people. The 2 of them maintained their original posture and took 2 steps forward before falling to the ground dead. The pirates, who were not prepared at all, had their minds blank. They were at a loss. There's actually an ambush. Seeing the few honorable Marshall Continent elites pouncing towards him, Ling Su's mouth revealed a sneer. He gently swung his spear. The spear tip trembled and transformed into a silver sea of stars. The 3 honorable Marshall Continent elites revealed sinister killing intent. One of them had a layer of needle-like light enveloping his palm. Another was enveloped in white flames, and the last had a condensed light sword in his hand. Only the commander of the warship at the front shouted with all his might, "Attack! Attack immediately!" In every single person's heart, there was a blaze burning. A honeycomb sword cannon was smashed into pieces by the fine silver aura. Bang! It instantly exploded into dust, and in the midst of the flying debris, Ling Su's feet had already stepped onto the warship. Silver light beams as thick as a thumb shot out from the spear tip, effortlessly piercing through the hearts of the 3 enemies and out from their backs. All of the honorable Marshall Continent elites had a tacit understanding with each other, and in the blink of an eye, they made a decision. Hailed as Furious Ling Su and 1 spear to death, he had a fiery temper. His fighting intent was always high. His bravery was unparalleled, and he was the best choice to rush the formation. In close quarters combat, tactics and coordination were secondary. The most important thing was the imposing manner. Swoosh! His body suddenly disappeared from his original position. Airy spear of stars. Before the commander could speak, someone suddenly screamed out in fear. Not good. They are boarding the ship. The Yu family disciples saw that Ling Su was unstoppable, and all of them were extremely excited. Attack! Were we attacking? The adjutant, who had a sluggish gaze, subconsciously blurted out. The enemy's attacks were coming from all directions, so where were they going to attack? The pirates on the warship were all veterans, and many of them were the backbone of the honorable Marshall Continent, and were the true elites. The soldiers at the side of the ship only felt a silver light, like a shooting star, suddenly flying over. When the silver light rushed closer, they were shocked to realize that the silver light was actually a person. The fine silver aura was as heavy as a star. The soldiers, who instinctively raised their weapons to resist, were all struck by the heavy weapons and screamed as they were sent flying. Before they even landed, the soldiers' mouths and noses were filled with blood, and it was obvious that they would not be able to survive. In their vision, the enemies were getting closer and closer, and in their orange pupils, flames suddenly soared. The spherical arrow aura immediately exploded upon contact with the hull, and a berserk orange energy surged out. Without an energy barrier, the hull of the ship was as weak as paper in front of the berserk orange energy and instantly turned into ashes. Maybe in the future, they could be as strong as Master Ling Su. He appeared behind Yu Qing like a ghost and thrust it out with his silver spear. A honorable Marshall Continent elite's throat suddenly exploded, and a blood mist exploded out. The other 2's faces changed. They turned and wanted to escape, but how could Ling Su give them a chance? The situation was extremely dangerous. The 3 honorable Marshall Continent elites looked at each other and suddenly pounced towards Ling Su. The other few turned and pounced towards Yu Qing. This judgment caused his mind to tremble. The Yu family disciples that had just received pointers from Ling Su all charged forward. Ling Su's aura, when he went out to battle, was the strongest out of all of them. The incomparably bright silver light that filled the sky was suddenly attracted by an indescribable force, drawing out dazzling and blazing straight light scars in the air. Countless light scars gathered in front of Ling Su. Chapter 661. It was no secret that the Shang continent produced black gold, and the cooperation between the Suji worldwide commerce and the Shang continent proved that point. Their role was truly similar to scouts, and they were spread all around the Shang continent's estuary. Yi Lao Air ran the furthest, and was the one who discovered the pirates. The brutal drunk on Saint Blood became the worst nightmare for the disciples of the five families. But Jing Hao's prestige was established. Adding that Jing Hao set an example, he gained the respect of everyone. He had recently been provoked by Master Jing Hao. Tang Tian was not much older than him, but his strength was much stronger than him, and in a few moves he was defeated. Yi Lao Air, who had never submitted to anyone, was completely convinced. What he did not expect was that the powerful Master Jing Hao would actually run into the sea of energy like them, and seriously temper himself. We are pirates. What face do pirates and the Shang continent have? Fu Dong Ku waved his hands with a look of innocence. He had never thought that the energy whirlpools that could be seen everywhere would actually contain such a rich world. Sagittarius constellation and Aries constellation were brought away by Crane and Ling Su, while the remaining three families were handed over to Jing Hao by Tang Tian. You finally got to the point. Fu Dong Ku clapped his hands and praised. Suddenly, the warship's alarm sounded out. The adjutant, who was born in East Divergent Continent, had a look of approval, but he was a cautious person and said, "The Shang continent's fighting strength is very strong." A fleet with a pirate flag broke through the chaotic sea of energy and approached them at an astonishing speed. Not bad. Fu Dong Ku laughed. Indeed not bad, after calculating it. Can we get an eighth or a 10th? But why only an eighth? The White Sand continent is strong. The Bai family has a deep foundation. The Suji worldwide commerce is even richer, but they are too far away to stretch out their hands so far. Aren't they tired? It is not easy to be a broker. If the Shang continent is destroyed, they can only look on and sigh. This is our territory. It is not up to them to decide. Since their appetite is so big, then let's see if they have such good teeth. Tang Tian's words carried a trace of killing intent. The adjutant didn't know how to retort. After a long time, he said, "Actually, the alliance is a good choice for us." And the news from the scouts made Fu Dong Ku even more cautious. He had never heard of any army training in the Sea of Energy. Such a ferocious army. If they were to occupy more resources, who would be able to control them? After the exchange with the White Sands continent, Tang Tian did not think of asking the other two families. He believed that the results would not be too different. As expected, not long later, Bai Yu and Su Jin contacted Tang Tian, and their news were similarly not optimistic. In this day and age, it was not easy to give something away. A cold smile appeared on Tang Tian's face. He was no longer a novice on the battlefield. He knew exactly what these people were looking at. No one believed that the Shang continent could defend the pontoon bridge. Furthermore, when Tang Tian took the initiative to take out the pontoon bridge, it was seen as a lack of confidence. If it wasn't for the fact that they weren't strong enough, who would take out the pontoon bridge? On this matter, the White Sands and the Shang continent had the same stance, and the rejection from the other families made the White Sands continent furious. He and Suo Bai had specially discussed about it. If they were able to facilitate it and be able to interfere with the pontoon bridge to the White Sands continent, who had just escaped from a calamity, it would definitely be good news. Tang Tian felt that the five families were more suited to walk the path of individual battles in Heaven's Road, and armies were not suitable for them. Tang Tian had obtained a pile of spirit cards for the 5 constellations from 3 Spirit City. The martial techniques of the spirit cards were not considered strong, but they were extremely suitable for the disciples. They had abundant energy in their bodies, and low-grade martial techniques in their hands were able to unleash powerful might. Spirit technique cards were not suitable for them, and gaining enlightenment on laws was even more distant to them. They mustered up all their energy and would run out of the stronghold every day to train bitterly in the sea of energy. Some of them, for the sake of pursuing higher intensity, would even run to faraway places. Even Buzi Fei had been captured and had surrendered to the Shan continent. Underestimating the enemy was no different from seeking death. He saw a scout from the Shan continent who was wrapped in light. Upon seeing the fleet, without hesitation, he turned and ran. The scout did not seem to be affected much by the sea of energy and was extremely fast. It was already the third day that Jing Hao had observed him. His gaze was focused without any deviation. Fu Dongku regained his composure. Since he was discovered, there was no meaning in sneaking around. Fu Dongku gave the order without hesitation. The Shan continent no longer had any organized armies, and even if it was a forceful attack, Fu Dongku had sufficient confidence. Jing Hao's diligence had set an example for the three families. Although he had decided to launch a sneak attack, but he did not dare to underestimate the Shan continent's fighting capabilities. In truth, he was rather fearful of the Shan continent's fighting capabilities. The Shan continent had defeated the vast Star continent in a few battles, and on the surface, there were only 2 points, the terrain and the enemies underestimating the enemy. But Fu Dongku could still see many things. Ever since Yi Lao, Air, and the rest had completed the training in the Sea of Energy with the fleet, they had been immersed in the high-intensity training. To the disciples of the 5 families who had a blood feud with each other, the fastest way to raise their own strength was their top priority. As for the danger and intensity, they did not care about it all. Fu Dongku's face changed. Scouts. The Shan continent actually placed scouts so far away. Fu Dongku suddenly stood up and bellowed. What's going on? Fu Dongku did not want to clash head-on with the Shan continent, but he did not want the Shan continent to take down the pontoon bridge so easily, so he thought of an idea. The Shan continent had moved out in full force and was currently at their weakest, and at such a crucial time, a surprise attack would be enough to make the Shan continent suffer. Pirates! Tang Tian squinted his eyes. Suddenly, he sensed something and raised his head. His calm and deep gaze seemed to pierce through the boundless energy. They had a huge appetite. Just at that moment, Yi Lao suddenly rushed in like a gust of wind. Boss! Boss! Pirates! There are pirates! So what if they found it? Fu Dongku laughed. Who asked the Shan continent to have such a good plan? But the pontoon bridge is a place that they will fight for, and even if they want to give it away, they have to prove that they have the qualifications to do so. If not, to think that they can give it away as a favor without an owner, that is truly wishful thinking. If not for the White Sands continent, the Bai family, and the Suji worldwide commerce's face, who do you think the Shan continent is? He was infatuated. Tang Tian was helpless. Tang Tian did not know that Fu Dongku was approaching the Shan continent, but he could smell something out of the ordinary. It was a proposal that everyone thought was in the bag, but who knew that it would not go smoothly, and everyone chose to remain silent and observe. Jing Hao squinted his eyes. He looked at the energy vortex in front of him and suddenly laughed. Jing Hao stared at the energy vortex in front of him. Bai Yu and Su Jin's situation was the same. Fu Dongku had mistaken them as scouts. The Shan continent's tight security exceeded Fu Dongku's expectations, but he quickly laughed because it had fully exposed the enemy's weakness of not being strong enough. Eldest young noble said solemnly. Commander Sao Bai also said so. Our White Sand continent will forever be Mr. Meng's friends. If you need our cooperation, Mr. Meng, feel free to speak. We can cooperate with Mr. Meng and give these greedy people some pressure. It's nothing. Tang Tian consoled them. They will quickly understand the situation. Tang Tian knew what the continents were thinking. The pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light was indeed a big piece of meat, but if it were to be split among so many powerhouses, each of them would not get much. The continents were not satisfied with just an eighth of the profits. The energy vortex had a diameter of 10 m. It was multicolored and slowly revolved. Similar energy vortexes could be seen everywhere in the sea of energy, and the larger energy vortexes would have a diameter of over 10,000 kilometers. Such a gigantic object, it was extremely dangerous to go near it. 6,000 kilometers away from the Shan continent's estuary, a group of pirates were quietly advancing in the sea of energy. Fu Dongku wanted to give the Shan continent a difficult problem. The black gold or the pontoon bridge, which one do you want? The adjutant did not know whether to laugh or cry at his superior's shameless attitude. They will definitely find out. If I need your continent's help, I will definitely not be courteous. Tang Tian laughed. Jing Hao's method of teaching them was even simpler, sparring. Behind him was the Shan continent's estuary. Truly, eldest young noble was embarrassed. I am sorry, Mr. Meng. I have yet to receive a reply from any one of them. From the bronze plate, eldest young noble, the current White Sands continent's new continent lord's ashamed voice came out. He initially thought that with the White Sands continent's name, the other continents would at least give him some face, but he never expected that the few of them would be indifferent. Scouts. We have encountered scouts. Even someone as strong as Master Jing Hao was like that. What excuse do they have to be lazy? But if we do that, we will have to shed all pretense of cordiality with the Shan continent. His adjutant was filled with worry. He was different from Fu Dongku, who liked to take risks. His adjutant was a cautious man, experienced and conservative. Inside the energy vortex, he had already found 46 different types of energy. He realized that the energy vortex was not quiet at all. It was like a volcano inside. All the berserk energies were twisting together, forming a miraculous balance. He realized that all the energies were constantly fighting against each other, annihilating each other, and constantly producing new energy. Inside the chaotic energy, inside the energy that was destroying new life, there would occasionally be a few straight light beams. They were extremely inconspicuous, and their lives were extremely short, but Jing Hao was completely attracted to them. The Shan continent is currently at its most empty, and it is our best chance. The tall and skinny man who spoke had a smile that was not a smile on his face. He squinted his eyes, giving off the feeling of a fox. Dongqi Fox, Fu Dongku, was intelligent and resourceful, and was the East Divergent Continent's most famous strategist general. He was good at taking risks, and liked to move unpredictably, and was unpredictable. Everyone increase your speed. The two of them always had conflicting opinions, but Fu Dongku had never changed his adjutant. Fu Dongku knew that he had acted rashly, and needed a cautious and meticulous person to help him fill in the gaps. His adjutant's ability was average, but he was meticulous and steady, and was the best compliment to him. Chapter 662. When he sensed the intense energy undulation behind him, the rain of light bullets caused his face to turn ashen. Song Didi did not stop, borrowing the momentum of the light ball in his right hand. He took a step forward and threw out the light ball in his left hand. His movements were extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he had thrown out 12 waves of light bullets. The soldiers behind him also threw out crazily, continuously throwing out 12 waves of light bullets, each person throwing out a total of 24 light bullets. Bang! Many strange and weird weapons were sent over. There were more than 162 types, but only 7 passed Bing's evaluation, and Tempest was one of them. With that, Bing brought the majority of the troops and left. Kill. Barbara, who was looking left and right, froze. He cursed the person who designed Tempest 100 times in his heart. Bang, bang, bang. The blue dwarves behind him all took out different shaped components from their backs. Their movements were silent, pairs of blue eyes releasing a faint blue light aura, like blue flames. Song Didi was completely calm. He was originally strong and powerful. After waving the black basket, he was satisfied without any hindrance. Tempest was more troublesome to wear. Even a skilled one would require more than a minute. The awakened army took a minute and a half, which was considered good. But the scene looked slightly comical. Rows and rows of soldiers dressed in bulky half-body armor, their arms that were thicker than the blue dwarves' bodies, carrying 2 black baskets. Yin, who was attacking the bright symbol stronghold with all his might, did not expect that there would be a sneak attack from behind. 3 hours later, the awakened army's reputation in the blue world grew, and more awakened blue dwarves came to seek refuge, hoping to join the army. What happened to the might and majesty? What happened to the tyranny that could explode the heavens? The blue dwarves were proficient in throwing, the black gold dwarves were suited for warship weapons, and Tempest was a product that perfectly utilized these 2 points. Through the weapons, the blue dwarves strengthened their arms, causing their throwing ability to become even more astonishing. It was comparable to the light bullets fired by warships, although it could only support 24 of them, but to the blue dwarves, it was enough. This subordinate understands. Seiyuan replied calmly. His tone did not have any excitement or ripples, as though he was answering an extremely normal question. Although the awakened blue dwarves were timid, but they were extremely intelligent. They improved at lightning speed. Although the constant tempering of war couldn't make them valiant and invincible, it dug out the unique cunning in their personalities. Drifting and unpredictable, slippery, the awakened army style that the enemies hated gradually formed. Kill. Song Didi's mouth exposed a sneer. His deep blue eyes were as cold as the blue ocean, releasing a biting cold intent. The enemy's back that did not have any defense was simply like a beast's soft and delicious abdomen. The silver battleship was instantly riddled with holes, and thick smoke billowed from it. The other battleships around it had already been reduced to balls of fire. That was a battleship, and in the blue world, whenever a human battleship appeared, they could only hope to escape. If not for the blue sea acting as a natural barrier to stop the warships, the blue world would have fallen countless times. But very quickly, all of the honorable Marshall Continent elites were destroyed. Roaring in unison, countless light bullets the size of baskets soared into the sky. Like raindrops, they flew towards the warships in front of them. The blue dwarves were already small and skinny, which made them look even heavier. The deep blue eyes that looked like a hunter quickly found his target, the pirates that were attacking the stronghold with all their might. The awakened army's strength was quickly expanding, and Song Didi's standard was continuously improving. In the long history of mankind, war had never disappeared. How to fight, how to battle with wits and courage. The rich and complete theories made the blue world's military theories look extremely primitive and immature. The awakened blue dwarves greedily absorbed the nutrients. They yearned for the day that they could use their hands and wisdom to create their own civilization, and not the blue sea. His gaze regained its calmness and said solemnly, "Gather the captives and fix the door. Bring the defense map of the bright symbol stronghold over." "What is that?" He raised the black basket in his right hand, and the army quietened down. He quietly raised his right hand. All the soldiers of the awakened army did the same action, and light bullets lit up one after another. The bright symbol stronghold that he was guarding would become the iron gate of the pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light, and no one would be able to pass through his territory. The energy barrier of the warship could only last for 3 seconds, and then shattered. The swarm of light bullets smashed onto the body of the warship like raindrops. Sparks flew everywhere. Wood chips flew everywhere. The explosions were so loud that no sound could be heard. The dazzling light aura enveloped every corner of the warship. It was a vast expanse of white, and nothing could be seen. Everyone's faces were pale and fearful. They had never suffered such a fierce attack before. Song Didi, who was gasping for breath, looked at the battlefield in front of him in a daze, as though he could not believe his own eyes. The storm on their bodies was filled with cracks. The fragments started to fall from the soldiers' bodies, but the soldiers were the same as Song Didi, staring blankly at the fleet that was enveloped by the flames and explosions. The flourishing and rich sacred Saint Galaxy made the self-aware, awakened blue dwarves yearn for it. Compared to the barren and quiet blue world, the sacred Saint Galaxy had a long history and unique civilization. It was so colorful and brimming with attraction. Everyone get ready. Assholes, why do they look like a group of murderers that want to go out and buy vegetables? Song Didi felt the blood in his body boiling. His body bent backwards, the black basket in his right hand naturally drooped down. The dazzling light aura quickly converged in the black basket, and in the blink of the eye, the light aura inside the black basket became extremely bright, forming a bright light bullet. Seiyun watched the large group leave, his calm gaze finally revealing a trace of ripples. He knew that the following battle would be extremely difficult, but wasn't this what he had been waiting for? Is this truly the result of our battle? Whoosh! At the same time, the fighting inside the bright symbol stronghold was nearing its end. The sounds of the warships exploding outside caused the pirates inside the bright symbol stronghold to sink into the mud, and the imminent danger caused them to lose their last will to resist. They were, after all, pirates, and their determination to fight could not be compared to the elites of the Honorable Marshall Continent, and the elites of the Honorable Marshall Continent were still resisting stubbornly. The deep blue eyes above the aquiline nose were sharp and filled with an oppressive feeling. He was currently in high spirits. The awakened army that he had personally created was becoming sharper and sharper. To a commander, there was nothing that could give him a greater sense of accomplishment. Barbara was his assistant, mainly in charge of logistics and liaising with the Shan continent, adding that although his military accomplishments were extremely poor, but he had a lot of crooked brains and was able to help Song Didi resolve some difficult problems. Ing Yan's warship suddenly ignited with an unprecedented blaze. It completely exploded. The gigantic wave of air caused the awakened army to become sluggish. They skillfully started to assemble, and in about a minute and a half, they were done. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Song Didi tore off the broken pieces on his body and shouted excitedly, "Do not let any fish escape the net." Song Didi roared out. He suddenly threw out the light bullet in his hand. The half-body armor that strengthened his arms caused his strength to become extremely terrifying. The light bullet was thrown out at an astonishing speed. The other soldiers seemed to have awoken from a dream. All of them seemed to have awoken from a dream. They took out their javelins and rushed out with Song Didi. The bright symbol stronghold was equipped with all sorts of fighting facilities, and with Seiyun's outstanding defense. Even if the bright symbol stronghold was not impregnable, it was definitely a tough bone to crack. Tempest was a one-time use weapon. "I'll leave this place to you." Bing nodded his head in satisfaction. Seiyun's mental state had always been extremely strong, and handing the bright symbol stronghold to him made him feel at ease. It was the first time Tempest was used in a real battle. Song Didi opened his eyes wide, not daring to relax. The only standard to test a weapon was a real battle. When Tempest was sent to Song Didi's hands, it immediately made Song Didi's eyes light up. The Empyrean Ice Tree Spears were extremely powerful in battles in the continent, but in the Sea of Energy, it was far from enough to deal with warships. Tempest was used to deal with warships. This kind of low-end weapon design was already unable to attract Sai Lei's interest. Luckily, she had many hidden dragons and crouching tigers under her, and there were countless of them with special tastes. They finally had the chance to show off, and all of them acted as though they were injected with chicken blood. They started to think and rack their brains. Bright symbol stronghold, take it down. When he arrived at the battlefield, he coincidentally saw the bright symbol stronghold shooting out light beams and the occasional dazzling light auras. Many of the soldiers could not help but hug their heads. They did not dare believe it. "Do you understand your mission?" Bing looked at Seiyun and asked. That was the only question that surfaced in his mind, followed by the rapid and intense explosion, causing his mind to go blank. Song Didi was no longer the Song Didi of the past. The research and development of the Black Gold series of weapons was Bing's request. The reason was simple. It was cheap. To the Shan continent, the endless black rock desolate beach was extremely cheap. It was fine to bring some special items from Three Spirit City, but if they had to bring normal weapons from Three Spirit City, then young Lad Tang would not need to do anything else. Pirates? 72,000 light bullets, like a tempest, occupied the entire sky. Tempest was its name. The Shan continent's new Black Gold series of weapons, created by Grandmaster Sai Lei's laboratory. It was a brand new weapon. It looked like an armor, just that it only had the upper body. The shoulders and arms were extremely thick and solid. But the most eye-catching thing was that the thick and solid palms were holding onto a large black metal basket that looked like a bamboo basket. The awakened army currently had 3,000 men, and was the largest army in the Shan continent because Bing thought that the Blue Dwarves' individual fighting capabilities were too weak, and if they were too few in numbers, they would not be able to display sufficient fighting capabilities. Under the rumbling explosions, the intense sounds of fighting caused Song Didi's fighting intent to soar. The awakened army's previous mission was to roam around the pontoon bridge and increase the pressure on the vast star continent, so they did not leave the pontoon bridge. When Bing's orders arrived, Song Didi immediately brought the awakened army and set off. When the flames dissipated, the awakened army was empty. Chapter 663. Tang Tian did not have many cards in his hand. The energy vortexes would definitely not explode, unless they meant something else. Sieging frigates continued to explode, reflecting Fu Dongku's ashen face. He was already enraged to the extreme. Compared to the vast and dangerous sea of energy, Tang Tian was more familiar with it. Fighting in a familiar place was always the right choice. Bu Zifei looked at Tang Tian. He was extremely unfamiliar with the big boss, and had never spoken more than 10 sentences to him. The big boss did not meddle in the affairs of the continent, and only trained every day, crazily trained. It was as though everything was handled by his direct superior, Master Bing. Bang! It is an energy vortex. His subordinate immediately replied. Bang, bang, bang. So Tang Tian did not even think of defending. Fu Dongku's roar resonated throughout the entire fleet. All the warships and frigates braced themselves and rushed forward. There was no meaning in rushing out himself. His personal strength was ordinary, and at the crucial moment, he was unable to save the big boss. But thinking about it, staying in the stronghold was akin to sitting still and waiting for death. His face revealed a satisfied look. His feet did not touch the ground. His figure flashed and appeared in another place, doing the same thing. An intense explosion came out from behind, the flames that soared into the sky, illuminating his vision. He ignored the pirate warships that were closing in on him from afar and drew vortexes one after another. The flames enveloped a few sieging frigates. Fu Dongku relaxed. Energy vortexes could be seen everywhere, and all the small energy vortexes were uncountable. For an energy vortex to pose a threat to the hull, it required a diameter of over 60 m. But such a large energy vortex would release bright light auras and was easily discovered. Energy vortexes were energy vortexes that were so small that they were unable to release light auras. Such energy vortexes had pitiful power and were unable to shake the thick defense of the frigates. Suddenly, Fu Dongku thought about something, and his face changed. Before he could say anything, about half an hour, full speed ahead. Bu Zifei's mood was extremely gloomy. He was the commander of a war god, but the one assisting him was a bold and stupid ruler. Master Bing was truly unlucky. Who knew if he was mocking himself? But Bu Zifei's mood was not as gloomy as before. Everyone was on high alert. Slowing down meant that they were ready for battle. They had already investigated the situation of the Shan continent, and this time, Fu Dongku had brought many sieging boats, which were specially used to attack the strongholds of the Shan continent. Sieging boats were powerful against strongholds, but as a single combat unit, they had many drawbacks. Upon rushing out of the stronghold and entering the sea of energy, Bu Zifei immediately woke up. Fu Dongku's face was ashen. The might of the explosion was negligible to his warship. However, to a siege ship with low defense, it was enough to be fatal. Fu Dongku was extremely careful. Crafty people were usually cautious, although they liked to take risks, but to be able to succeed time and time again, they were definitely daring and meticulous. Boom, boom, boom. Yes. What is going on? Fu Dongku suddenly stood up and bellowed. They are just pirates. Tang Tian raised his hand to interrupt Bu Zifei, his face full of disapproval. Suddenly, the boat trembled. It was not a big tremor, but the alert Fu Dongku frowned. What's going on? With that, Without giving Bu Fei a chance to stop him, he brought the disciples of the three families and flew out. Bu Fei's face was pale white. He had thought that the big boss was unreliable, but he never thought that the big boss would be so unreliable. The Shan continent had fought 2 consecutive battles and won. So why would any ordinary pirates dare to come and find trouble with them? Bu Fei knew that the pirates were most likely impersonated by some powerhouse. The good news was that after the past few days of work, the stronghold at the estuary was already starting to take shape and could be used to a certain extent. The surging energy became even faster, and a complete energy vortex quietly formed. Fu Dongku's face was filled with bewilderment. He shot to the window. Only then did he see clearly. The speed of the warship was extremely fast, and the energy barrier seemed to have touched something, causing regiment after regiment of flames to explode on the energy barrier. The explosions were extremely concentrated, but luckily the power of the explosions was not strong, although the light barrier trembled, but it did not affect it too much. Compared to them, although it was difficult for the saints who fought alone to contend against armies, they were much less restricted in this aspect. He blindly followed behind Tang Tian and the rest, silently watching them. To Bu Fei, his staying behind was because Master Bing hoped that he could help the big boss defend the Shan continent. From the looks of it, the big boss did not seem to have any commanding ability. There is still 1 sieging frigate left. The other frigates have suffered varying degrees of damage. A subordinate reported with a trembling voice. Bu Fei was about to speak, but was interrupted by a voice. Just like the stronghold at the estuary, it was a powerful defensive weapon, but Tang Tian was not familiar with it at all. What was the use of each region? How to unleash the strongest fighting strength? Tang Tian was completely clueless. At that time, he might have to escape for his life. He felt extremely bitter, because he did not know how to. In his dictionary, there was no such thing as defense. Bu Fei clenched his teeth and followed. Just the precious Bright Village Regiment alone was not enough to defend the stronghold. He was not the commander of the precious Bright Village Regiment, and thus his fighting strength could not be fully unleashed. The relationship between a general and an army was inseparable. Without an outstanding general, an army would just be a motley crew. And without an army that he was familiar with, the general would be like a rootless duckweed and of no use. Damn it! Just at that moment, the hull of the ship started to tremble. The soldiers in charge of steering the ship had ashen faces. They did not understand the situation at all. But to Jing Hao, the newly formed energy whirlpool was enough. Even if they defended the stronghold, Bu Fei did not have the confidence. For the enemy to choose such a crucial moment to make a move, they must have received the news and would definitely not underestimate the enemy. My own side is weak. If we leave the stronghold to fight, wouldn't that be suicide? Tang Tian did not care about Bu Fei. He had his own thoughts. He was clear of his own capabilities. Bing was enough to lead the village regiment to defend the stronghold. But if it was him, he would definitely fail. How much longer till we reach the estuary? Bing brought all of the elite armies away, leaving behind the disciples of the 3 families, Libra, Cancer, and Aquarius, as well as the precious Bright Village Regiment. The precious Bright Village Regiment's strength had risen very quickly. The continuous high-intensity battles had made them have the aura of elites. But as their starting point was too low, they still had a long way to go to become true elites. At the current stage, their purpose was very simple and could only be used for defense. The entire fleet was advancing at full speed. They were like an angry arrow, piercing straight into the energy whirlpool formation that Jing had set up. Fu Dongku raised his head to look, his eyes bursting with light aura. He could only watch as Tang Tian brought a group of people and rushed out of the stronghold. He was somewhat regretful. In truth, he was already convinced by Master Bing. The unfathomable and unfathomable Master Bing was like a god of war in his eyes. To be able to listen to the orders of such an outstanding commander, it was the fortune of any general. Bu Fei had been cautious and conscientious for the past few days, because he felt that the Shan continent had a bright future and he could not allow himself to fall. But he did not want to be captured again. You, bring everyone and prepare to attack. The energy whirlpool that had just formed was dim, and could not be seen with the naked eye. It was the initial stage of the energy whirlpool, and with the flow of time, it would gradually become stronger and stronger, and the powerful suction force would produce dazzling light scars, and only a few energy whirlpools were able to grow to a gigantic size of over 10,000. Li Tang Tian pointed to the remaining disciples of the three families and gave the order. Newborn calves were not afraid of tigers. The disciples of the three families did not have any fear on their faces. Instead, all of them were eager to fight. Fu Dongku's ashen face turned black. "There's someone there," a subordinate exclaimed. In the shadows of the sea of energy, a sturdy man wielding a sword seemed to have sensed his gaze. He raised the big sword in his hand and pointed it at him, the sword tip suddenly slashing through the air. When the explosion stopped, it announced that they had already rushed out of the dangerous energy whirlpools. The light auras from the explosions continued to blossom, and through the windows of the warship, it flickered. Compared to Master Bing, who was omnipotent, Bu Zifei's impression of the big boss was extremely vague. It was not only Tang Tian, all the disciples of the three families had gone through the long-distance training. Adding that they had been training nonstop, they were extremely familiar with the sea of energy. Drunk on Saint Blood, In Jing Hao's hand trembled slightly, and the sword body trembled slightly, attracting the energy around him. The energy around him was attracted and quickly surged towards Drunk on Saint Blood. The sword tip of Drunk on Saint Blood drew a perfect circle. The circular sword aura flashed and disappeared, but the suction force suddenly became stronger. After fighting so many battles, Tang Tian gradually understood a simple logic. Fighting a war was the same as fighting. One had to display one's own advantages and avoid one's own weaknesses. What was his advantage? Attack. Although facing a fleet, his attack was not considered strong, but obviously it was stronger than his own defense. Calculate the losses. Fu Dongku squeezed out the word from his teeth. After 10 minutes, he suddenly stopped and raised his head. The pirate fleet had already barged into the whirlpool formation he had set up. In a vast region, he had drawn out a total of 6,000 energy whirlpools in one breath. Compared to Bu Zifei, who was a mature leader and had a clear analysis, Tang Tian relied more on his astonishing intuition towards battles. To him, the analysis on paper did not have any meaning. It was not that it was useless, but that he did not understand it. For example, their defenses were terrible, or the preparation time before the battle was too long, etc. Slowed down after 10 minutes. Fu Dongku never thought that he would encounter such a situation, but he was experienced in battles and knew that it was too late to slow down. What he could do now was to gather his strength and rush out of the dangerous region. Bu Zifei jumped in fright. It was too reckless, and immediately stopped him. "Master, our strength is at an absolute disadvantage. We need to borrow the stronghold's defense to..." Bang, bang, bang. Fu Dongku, who was flustered and exasperated, punched the table. He had brought a total of 20 sieging frigates. It was his most important trump card to destroy the Shang continent stronghold, but he never thought that before they even reached the Shang continent, they would be completely destroyed. Damn it. All right, maybe seeing that the situation is bad, I can turn and escape. Chapter 664. He was a general, and to not fight and escape was not a humiliation, it was giving up his last bit of dignity. Tang Tian's cold snort caused the eyes of the disciples of the three families to turn red. Bu Zifei was at a loss. He had received the order without thinking and was completely confused. Is there any meaning in going back and defending for half an hour? There is no meaning at all. The other party came prepared. The scouts have already found out about the other party's strength. 3 warships and 6 middle-sized frigates. With such a strength, they could easily flatten the empty Shang continent. Tang Tian's eyes suddenly lit up. He waved his hands at Bu Zifei. Undercurrent region? How will Tang Tian deal with the pirates? Bu Zifei was startled. He subconsciously went over. Jing Hao skillfully advanced in the sea of energy. His face that looked like it was being chiseled by knives and hatchets was shockingly calm. That pair of eyes that were as calm as a deep lake, as though there was nothing that could cause a ripple in his mind. Only the faintly discernible smile at the corner of his mouth revealed the curiosity in his heart. As for whether or not the undercurrent of energy vortexes were man-made, what did it matter? All of the rookies were talking at once, causing Bu Zifei to shake his head in his heart. He was extremely disappointed. He initially had a trace of anticipation in his heart, although the big boss was unbearable. But even Master Bing, such a powerful person, was willing to assist him, so there should be something special about it. To rush out without a plan and ask a bunch of rookies who did not know anything, if that was not clumsy, then what was? Bu Zifei was slightly unhappy. He felt that no matter how the big boss saw it, asking him would be more reliable than asking the rookies. No matter what, he was a silver-gray general, and in the vast star continent, he was the main general of the main army. In any aspect, he should be even more trustworthy. Boss, you don't have to provoke us. Whoever doesn't go in is a coward. Yilao Air snorted and rushed in. Tang Tian immediately stopped the disciples who were preparing to activate the star treasures. The light aura released by the star treasures were too eye-catching. When everyone heard Tang Tian say that they were going to sneak an attack, they immediately stopped. The undercurrent region was extremely close to the Shan continent's estuary. The energy flow in that region was extremely chaotic, and if one was not careful and was sucked in, they would lose their lives. The energy inside was extremely violent, and it was marked as a high danger zone. Suddenly, a familiar voice rang out. Tang Tian jumped in fright, and then he was overjoyed. Not far away, Jing Hao stood with his sword in hand, smiling at everyone. He was initially prepared to return to the Shan continent to support everyone, but he never expected to see Tang Tian and the rest on the way, and thus ran over. Tang Tian called everyone over. There's still some time left. Everyone, come up with a plan. Where should we launch our sneak attack? When Tang Tian heard that the enemy had lost almost all of their ships, his face revealed a look of joy, and he clapped his hands. That's great. Then Bu Zifei should be able to hold on for more than half an hour. Bu Zifei's eyes regained his determination. He tidied up his clothes and meticulously bowed towards the direction Tang Tian disappeared to. That's right, it was clumsy. Does the big boss have a prejudice against me? But he did not say anything. He knew that regardless of what he said, the big boss would not listen. And all of these rookies only listened to the big boss's orders. We can find a chance to turn defeat into victory in half an hour. The other disciples all entered. Half an hour? Then half an hour. If we can't do it, we will just die. As a soldier, dying on the battlefield was not a big deal. There is no other way. Jing Hao thought for a moment, then nodded his head. If that's the case, there is some hope. What about the warships? The defenses of the warships are too strong, and they also focus on defense. Even if we rush to the back of the warships, it will be difficult to break through their defenses. Quick, everyone activate your star treasures, and seize the time to enter. Remember, activate the star treasures with all your might. Tang Tian said, Big Brother Jing Hao, go in first and take care of them. Even if the sieging ships were already destroyed, Fu Dong Ku still had absolute confidence that the remaining strength was enough to flatten the Shan continent. Bu Zifei's reply was not made up. He had done some deductions beforehand. As for the disciples of the three families, they were people who did not have any synchronization and were of no help in defending the city. Right from the start, he could only rely on Precious Bright Village. Young lad Tang was definitely not an intelligent person, but every time he would use all sorts of strange methods, and all the inconceivable victories, it would always cause people to be dumbstruck. Many times, he would win so mysteriously that even an old hand like Bing could not understand it. He wanted to take a step forward, but when he looked around, suddenly he was at a loss. Although the world is huge, but where can I go? Being a captive is already humiliating enough. Do I still have to be a deserter? No, I cannot be a deserter. I can be defeated. I can lose. I can be a captive. I can surrender. I can die, because I have done my best, and that is the result of the battle, although it is not a good result. But a deserter? That is cowardice, to not even have the courage to fight. There are star treasures. Tang Tian thought about it. Aquarius, Libra, and Cancer are all experts in defense. I have entered the undercurrent region before. With the help of the star treasures, I feel that I can hold on there. The undercurrent region? Everyone was startled. Everyone was familiar with the terrain around the Shan continent's estuary, and after a few minutes, they arrived at the undercurrent region. I remember that there is a large energy regiment at a place. Can we lure them there? And then detonate the energy regiment? But up till now, Big Boss's performance could only be described as clumsy. Tang Tian immediately asked, "You bring the precious Bright Village Regiment to guard the estuary stronghold. How long can you last?" Before he finished speaking, Tang Tian's figure was already 300 m away. The disciples of the three families awoke from their stupor, and all followed behind. When the last disciple barged in, the pirates in the distance entered their vision. "No, I cannot escape." Jinghao's speed became faster. A cold glint flashed past Tang Tian's eyes. Without saying a word, he dove into the undercurrent region. "I have an idea. We will talk about it later." Tang Tian's eyes flashed with a cold glint. "We will enter the undercurrent region first." Jinghao nodded his head and took the lead to enter the undercurrent region. In the blink of the eye, only Bu Zifei was left alone in his original position. What will he do this time? It truly makes me curious. Target, the Shan continent's estuary. Big Brother Jinghao, did you do it just now? Tang Tian asked anxiously. What can I do in half an hour? Bu Zifei, who was behind him, shook his head. It was a terrible decision. Although the sneak attack was unexpected, but the opponent was an entire fleet, and to use their flesh and blood to fight against an entire fleet, they definitely had no chance of winning. Jinghao's words did not have any intention to belittle him. Even the proud and arrogant Yilao heir did not dare to refute him. Even though they had trained in the sea of energy for so long, but no one had ever dared to enter the undercurrent region. Fu Dongku suppressed the rage in his heart, although he did not recognize the man wielding the sword. But to do such a provocative action, he was most likely someone from the Shan continent. He did not lose his rationality. The opponent's provocation was to attract his attention and distract him. Jinghao nodded his head and explained everything that had happened. He turned and flew towards the direction of the Shan continent's estuary. Jinghao muttered, "It is too dangerous inside the undercurrent region. The two of us should be fine, but the rest will be in danger." This bow was for the sake of battle. This bow was for the sake of his own dignity. "We can lie in ambush in the undercurrent region." Tang Tian scoffed. "The other party knows that we have few soldiers and will definitely not think that we will take the initiative to split our forces. The undercurrent region is very dangerous, and they will definitely not think that there will be people hiding inside. When they are fighting in full swing, we will suddenly rush to their back and fiercely attack. They will have fun. We will go to the undercurrent region," Tang Tian said without turning his head. "But you guys are still underestimating me. We cannot get too close. If we get too close, they will definitely be prepared." "Precious Bright Village Regiment?" Bu Zifei subconsciously replied. "If there are sieging boats, it will not take more than 10 minutes. If there are no sieging boats, we can hold on for half an hour. The only difference is that it will be slightly more troublesome." "Are the others that stupid?" Bu Zifei felt that it was ridiculous. "Forget it. Why should I waste my time with these people who are all brawn and no brains? Anyways, there's no hope here. I better run for my life." He was truly curious. Tang Tian and the rest had already seen the flames in the distance, and Tang Tian was the first to guess that it was most likely Big Brother Jinghao who had made a move. This made him roused. He felt that it meant that his thoughts were correct, and that the sea of energy had many places that they could use. If you are even afraid of this, how are you going to take revenge in the future? Bu Zifei helplessly realized that even if the big boss asked him, he would not be able to give any useful suggestions. He took a deep breath. His goal was to take down the Shan continent, and that was the biggest goal. With just one person, he would not be able to affect the entire battle. Fu Dongku, who had calmed down, the anger in his eyes calmed down, he suddenly laughed. For the enemy to use such a low-level method, it meant that the enemy had exhausted all his tricks. The pirates were definitely not a motley crew. To be able to maintain their composure after receiving such provocation, the enemy's commander was definitely not ordinary. Good. Tang Tian's eyes lit up. Go back now. Remember, you must hold on for half an hour. The rest of you, follow me. Fu Dongku's calm orders greatly boosted the morale of the soldiers, causing them to immediately calm down. This was the commander that they could trust. This was the omnipotent Dong Chi Fox. Do not use any star treasures. We will ambush them. Hey, what's going on? And the truly terrifying thing about him was that he had never been defeated before. Half an hour? Hearing that, Jing Hao knew that Tang Tian had some tricks up his sleeves. What do you think? Bu Fei did not say anything, but he tossed the thought aside. Maybe the big boss is not familiar with me. But what can I do? Boss, where are we going? Yilao Er could not help but ask. Bu Fei, who was frowning, racked his brains, but realized that he did not have any ideas. The disparity in strength between the two parties was too great, and the only way was to borrow the power of the Sea of Energy. But he had long sent people to survey the Sea of Energy around the Shan continent, and there were no dangerous places. The undercurrent region was like a black ocean, devouring the surrounding light. The chaotic black energy surged endlessly. The disciples of the three families all had pale faces. The undercurrent region was a black swamp in the Sea of Energy, and even the frigates were extremely afraid of the undercurrent region. The rest looked at each other, their faces filled with hesitation. Jing Hao saw that the fleet was not affected at all, and felt somewhat regretful. He turned and rushed towards the same direction. He could guess what the enemy was planning. Chapter 665. He thought of Ghost Claw. Tang Tian did not make a sound. He quietly came out from the undercurrent region and looked towards the direction of the estuary. Their manpower should have gone to maintain the energy barrier. If they maintain it with all their might, they can still hold on for another 3 minutes. The adjutant said, "My own student is actually able to do that." The berserk and chaotic energy flow in the undercurrent region immediately stabilized. The torrential storm just now had calmed down. Little Fool's mouth twitched. He did not say anything, and after a moment, he muttered to himself, "Teacher, thank you." He raised his head and looked at the dark flames that surged into the sky. The boiling ocean prison beneath his feet seemed to be in danger of losing control. "Ghost Claw, I will definitely do better than your expectations." The enemy's commander was obviously not satisfied and quickly reacted. The 3 warships became meat shields, protecting the 6 frigates. "He is an interesting person," Wu Wanghai agreed. Little Fool trained in the sword and was naturally fond of swords, although the sword's blood stench was too heavy and did not suit his character, but for a sword to be able to evolve to such a stage, it definitely had a glorious past. Ocean Prison, who was mocked, seemed to be angered. The black flames exploded. The ink-like void dark flames transformed into many black fire dragons. They were ferocious and sinister, surrounding the Saint Ocean Prison sword as they danced. After realizing that, Bu Fei's outstanding qualities as a silver-grade general immediately revealed itself. Wu Wanghai knew the man did not only ask for the sword concept from him, because inside the Dark Palace, there were many Saint Sword concepts sealed. The quiet young man was an extremely good student. Wu Wanghai was extremely fond of him, and pitted him for the heavy responsibility and mission he had to carry. Using this feeling, he imparted everything he knew. The young man did not let him down and improved at a godly speed. He first requested for the precious Bright Village Regiment to attack in groups of 50. This degree of attack could pose a threat to the frigates, but was unable to pose a threat to the warships. The enemy's frigates had no choice but to retreat, but the range of the frigates could not compare to the warships, which meant that the enemy's frigates could not exert any force, and the threat of the enemy immediately decreased. "When you guys are stronger, you can come here to train." The evolved Ocean Prison sword floated quietly in the air. Jing Hao watched as the transparent Ocean Prison sword that was as thin as a cicada's wing continued to form. The drunk on Saint blood in his hand struggled with all its might, burning his palm, but he remained indifferent, as though he did not feel anything. In his eyes, there was only the new sword that had been reborn from the black flames. His eyes were full of admiration. He could feel that the will of the sword had undergone a shocking transformation after this baptism. The reason why Drunk on Saint Blood was so restless was because it had sensed the appearance of a sword that could rival it. Bu Fei immediately sensed that the precious Bright Village Regiment could similarly pose a threat to them, especially their synchronization rate. The precious Bright Village Regiment's astonishing synchronization rate meant that they could gather even more soldiers and release a powerful attack. The disciples of the three clans, whose faces were filled with shock, were now as white as paper. They had never seen such a ferocious sword before. Moreover, there were two of them at once. Suddenly, with a crisp sound, the energy barrier of the stronghold shattered. Originally, the thick black flames at the tip of the sword quietly solidified, as if they had once again condensed into a sword tip. However, in the blink of an eye, the condensed sword tip disappeared once again. Bang, bang, bang. The pressure on everyone lessened, but no one realized that all of their gazes were fixated on the ocean prison sword that was as thin as a cicada's wing. The seemingly materialized sword concept was guarding the undercurrent region. Bang! The energy barrier shattered. One after another, light enveloped figures floated in front of them. All of them had anxious looks on their faces. The light around their bodies were not very stable. But for some reason, Tang Tian wanted to laugh. In the faraway ocean prison, Wu Wang-hai suddenly opened his eyes, his face filled with shock. The berserk killing intent engulfed everyone, causing the disciples of the three clans to be overwhelmed with shock. The condensed sword tip was still there, just that it had become transparent as the air, and in the undercurrent of energy, it was hard to detect. The dangerous and fatal undercurrent frantically surged into the black dragon's mouth. The dense black void, dark flames immediately became stronger, becoming even darker, and even the sword blade seemed to be engulfed by the darkness. Sigh. Little Fool looked at the Drunk on Saint Blood in Jing Hao's hand in shock. He knew that the blood sword was tyrannical, but he never thought that it would actually be able to suppress the ocean prison sword, and furthermore, it was the evolved ocean prison sword. If one looked carefully, they would realize that on the foreheads of the few black dragons that were dancing in the ocean prison sword, there was a faint rainbow-colored mark. That was the spirit devouring flame. After 1,500 years of time, after 1,500 years of boring waiting, I have finally welcomed a successor that can surpass me. Wu Wang-hai opened up his arms, his black hair dancing like snakes. The boiling ocean prison became even more berserk. His body quickly descended. Like a sword, he entered the ocean prison, but his face revealed a smile. This is quenching thirst with a dove. Fu Dong Ku chuckled. His face was relaxed. Victory was right in front of him. As long as they destroyed the energy barrier, the stronghold would be like an open door to them. He had never conversed with the strand of thought before. He only quietly felt and listened. The ocean prison below him that was formed from the endless dark flames suddenly expanded. Bang! A black pillar of fire shot out from behind him and shot into the sky. Following that, another thick and solid pillar of fire shot into the void above his head. The sword moved according to his thoughts. The few black dragons on the ocean prison swords suddenly opened their mouths. That is worthy of a name Drunk on Saint Blood. But he knew that even without the siege boats, it was only a matter of time before the stronghold was breached. 3 silver-grade warships, 6 silver-grade frigates, such a luxurious arrangement. They were definitely not pirates. Bu Fei even guessed that the commander of the enemy was someone he was familiar with. Seeing that the enemy continued to press forward, Bu Fei's mouth revealed a sneer. How can the black Drunk on Saint Blood be willing to submit? Upon being provoked, he immediately became enraged. The line of blood words on the black sword's body erupted with a red light. It was bright and alluring. A blood stench pervaded every corner. The black energy flow in the undercurrent region seemed to be dyed with a layer of blood. For the enemy to allow their frigates to reach the stronghold, they had to bring their warships close to the stronghold. But he quickly realized that the precious Bright Village Regiment's fighting strength was much stronger than what he had expected. After experiencing 2 arduous battles in the Sword Forest stronghold, the precious Bright Village Regiment's strength had improved greatly. That was also why he was the best at learning the Ocean Prison Sword. Over 10 years ago, the man broke through the void and asked for a thread of Ocean Prison Sword concept from him. He shook his head and threw away all the distracting thoughts in his mind. He could not help but clench his fists tightly. Ghost Claw, I am not a child anymore. I am already an adult. I have my mission. I have my responsibilities. Fu Dongku's face froze, and then his face changed. Not good. And Master Bing had designed the most superficial tactics for them. Under the astonishing synchronization rate, they were extremely powerful. A look of determination flashed past his eyes. He looked at the surrounding soldiers that were completely synchronized, their bodies enveloped in light auras, and said, "Get ready." The young man's heart was as resolute as steel. A strand of thought filled with blessings came out, causing Little Fool's body to tremble. He was extremely familiar with the strand of thought ever since he started learning the sword. It flashed past his eyes. In those dark and cold days, there was no joy, only suffocating bitter training, and this strand of thought was the only warmth in those days. Entering the undercurrent region, Tang Tian felt his vision darken. But the nature of the undercurrent was extremely similar to the void dark flames, and to Ocean Prison Sword, it was the best nourishment. Little Fool's mind moved. Maybe Ocean Prison Sword could evolve a second time here. Ocean Prison Sword's evolution was like adding wings to a tiger. His side strength had increased greatly, but Tang Tian was not happy. He and Little Fool's minds were linked. He could feel the strand of thought, and could also feel Little Fool's emotions. The disciples of the 3 families opened their eyes wide. They had never heard of a sword being so intelligent. It was like a living thing. There, the battle had already begun. All along, he had thought that the strand of thought was the Saint Sword Ocean Prison Sword concept. Ocean Prison Sword was frantically absorbing the black undercurrent. It was like a bottomless black hole, greedily and frantically absorbing the surrounding undercurrent of energy. The dark flames that enveloped the sword body were extremely dense. Suddenly, Little Fool's gaze exploded. He stared intently at the sword tip. "I have waited for too long. I can't wait anymore. You have a limitless future. As your teacher, I am very gratified. I am honored. This is the most sincere joy a teacher can have. Your achievements. Are you finally going to break through the ocean prison that I am guarding? That's great." Tang Tian said something that was completely unrelated to the battle in front of him. Wait a minute. Ocean Prison Sword borrowed the power of the endless ocean prison in the void. When Wu Wanghai was bestowed as a saint, he used the ocean prison dark flames as a sword and bestowed it with a god restriction, and his soul needed to guard the endless ocean prison, called a guard, but it was like an imprisonment. "My student, please allow me to lend you a helping hand." Little Fool flew out from Tang Tian's body. He curiously looked around. The last time Tang Tian was here, he was training. The undercurrent region's energy was extremely unique. It was similar to the void dark flames, but even more heterogeneous. But to him, it was a good place to train. He threw out the Saint Sword Ocean Prison, which flew into the chaotic flow, like a fish in water, releasing rumbling sound from time to time. Tang Tian looked at Little Fool, but did not say anything. Wu Wanghai was in a daze. "With such an outstanding student to inherit my legacy, I will guard the ocean prison. Only then will it be worth it." Wrong. I need to bring everyone and win. Drunk on Saint Blood in Jing Hao's hand released a trembling sound, as though it was extremely disdainful of Ocean Prison Sword. Ocean Prison seemed to be boiling. The rain of attacks smashed onto the light barrier of the stronghold, causing it to tremble continuously. Bu Zifei rejoiced in his heart. The enemy only had one sieging frigate, and its destructive power was limited. If not, it would be troublesome. Bu Zifei looked at the time, 22 minutes. But at that moment, he could not care about anything else. But it was not only the battle strength on paper, but also the mental state. Bu Zifei knew how important the invisible battle strength was. The enemy's intense attacks did not cause the soldiers of the precious Bright Village Regiment to panic. They were even laughing and joking with each other. Kill. The Berserk Ocean prison suddenly calmed down. The stronghold's energy barrier was under intense attacks. It was in imminent danger, and the stronghold's counterattack had become sporadic. Chapter 666. After a few seconds, his gaze regained its focus, and he was stunned by the scene in front of him. The other warship that was roughly 2 kilometers away from them was completely enveloped in flames. The soldiers wanted to rush out of the warship, but they were unable to break free from the terrifying flames. The 200 billion in front of his eyes had turned into 2 balls of fire, causing Fu Dongku to be completely stunned. Just at that moment, a shout came out from outside the warship. Throw! The ball of light was not fast, but the distance between them was too close, to the point that the warship was unable to dodge. Unless... Leave this place! Fu Dongku roared. His eyes were red, as though he was a gambler at the end of his rope. Tang Tian was like a bulldozer, rushing forward. His subordinate screamed, and Fu Dongku had already rushed to the window. The star treasures that were unwilling to be suppressed started to move and struggled in everyone's hands. The 700 over silver treasures, struggling at the same time, did not create a huge commotion, but it was not small either. The distance between both parties was too close and was immediately sensed. Childish. Little Fool glanced at Yaya, who was shouting excitedly. He expressionlessly appeared at the front of the group like a ghost, the transparent ocean prison sword in his hand thrusted out. Fu Dongku forced himself to calm down. If the information was true, then the enemy's plot had no meaning, because the enemy's strength was completely at a disadvantage, and such a plot would not allow them to gain the initiative. Fu Dongku quivered and suddenly shouted, "Retreat! Everyone retreat!" Fu Dongku's heart jumped. Sword after sword, Jing Hao brandished drunk on saint blood in his hand, as though he was taking a stroll in the park. A group of people had gathered behind him. Such a loss was enough to make his heart bleed. Fu Dongku only felt that the piercing light had filled his vision, and everything in front of him was white. The warship beneath his feet swayed intensely, as though he could not stand steadily, as though he was in the middle of storm. A moment later, the earth-shaking roar came slowly, and no one could hear a thing. Not good. Ambush. The enemy had been controlling the intensity of their attacks, forcing their warships to retreat and using their warships as meat shields. After that, they intentionally weakened their firepower, giving them a false impression that they were powerless, baiting their formation to continue pressing forward. The warship was too close, so close that it was impossible to dodge. The entire plan was closely linked. Even if he were to start all over again, Fu Dongku guessed that he would fall for it again. More than 700 silver secret treasures produced a suction force at the same time, causing all the energy within a radius of 100 miles to be pulled. Even the undercurrent area where Tang Tian and the others were hiding did not escape. The black energy turbulence looked like a piece of black silk cloth as it was sucked into the ball of light. Fu Dongku's face changed, his voice changed. "Leave this place. Run." Suddenly, a small head popped out from Tang Tian's clothes. It was Yaya. Its eyes were shining. Wasn't this the 2222 that it was best at? It howled and jumped out of Tang Tian's arms. In midair, the little flag behind its buttocks fluttered. It waved its pair of small fists. Although it was small in size, its fists were extremely hard, and its attack frequency was extremely fast. It was actually able to smash open a path. In the blink of an eye, a group of people follow behind it. There's an ambush. With Tang Tian and the rest leading the way, their speed became faster. However, it took them a full 10 minutes to cover a distance of less than 50 kilometers. These 10 minutes felt like a lifetime to them. If it was any other time, the distance of 50 li would only take a moment for them. The torrents flew everywhere, causing the space in front of them to become empty. Tang Tian took a step forward, and before the torrents closed up, he punched out again. Bang, bang, bang. The suction force behind them became weak, and everyone knew that they were out of danger. There was a flash of strong light. Tang Tian and the rest did not even turn to look. They ran with all their might, trying to get as far away from the light balls as possible. They knew how terrifying the suction force of the light balls were. At that time, they had sucked out all the energy in the entire southern islands. Oh my God! Quickly look! One by one, the light balls quickly lit up. All the star treasures that were in slumber were awakened. The martial spirits that originated from Heaven's Road felt the dense energy around them and could not help but cheer out. Ambush! Begin! More and more disciples revealed their fatigue, causing Tang Tian to become even more anxious. The suction force behind them was still astonishing. If they did not rush out of the area, they would once again be sucked into the whirlpool. An intense sense of danger enveloped Fu Dongku. His eyes were filled with fear. He felt as though he had fallen into a trap filled with blades. The warship is being sucked in. The subordinate's voice was filled with fear and despair. Get behind me! Tang Tian's order made everyone feel like they were being pardoned. The star treasures in their hands were like burning iron, and they were thrown towards the fleet in front of them. Then, without hesitation, everyone turned and ran. They were so agile. It was as though there was a mad dog chasing after them. They did not care about their image or posture. They were in a sorry state, as though they were afraid of something. They were in the sea of energy, and every inch of space was filled with dense and viscous energy. For such a medium-scale silver-grade warship, its defense was extremely outstanding. What was equally outstanding was its cost. Adding on the weapons, the medium-scale silver-grade warship required at least 200 billion cloud coins. With that said, he flicked his hand and threw the disciple in front of him. If it was any other time, with Tang Tian's strength, he could completely throw the disciple 300 m away. But this time, he only threw him 30 m away. Bang! It was a silver-grade warship. Stars revolved on the umbrella, and a thin layer of light mist floated out. Little Fool's expression was calm. His ocean prison sword had completed its evolution and was currently much stronger. Even against the torrent, he was still able to handle it with ease. They're behind us. Run with all your might. Jing Hao smiled. He raised drunk on Saint Blood in his hand and slashed at the torrent in front of him. Sigh. The energy torrent in front of him suddenly split apart, and the disciples behind him felt the pressure on them lessen. Seeing that the torrent was about to merge back together, Jing Hao slashed again. Is this a trap? Did they purposely leak out the news of the Shang continent being empty? Or was it fake news from the pontoon bridge? Countless of thoughts flashed past Fu Dongku's mind. The more he thought about it, the more afraid he became. A crafty person is bound to be suspicious. He initially thought that he had a 90% chance of success, but now that his confidence was shaken, he decided to retreat and observe the situation first. A groan came out from beside him. Tang Tian turned his head, only to see a disciple who was unable to control his body and was about to be swept away. Tang Tian's figure flashed. He rushed to his side, grabbed onto his collar, and bellowed, "Stay alert." When Tang Tian's words came out, everyone activated the star treasures in their hands at the same time. Seeing that the pirates were like a flock of startled birds, retreating in panic, Tang Tian became even happier. Fu Dongku's fleet was in the center of the vortex. How could they escape? The energy in the surrounding area all surged along with the light regiments. The nearby disciples immediately followed behind Little Fool. The surrounding energy surged towards them frantically. They were in the sea of energy, and what they lacked the least was energy. Every star treasure was like a vortex. Tang Tian had put in a lot of effort this time. The star treasures in the hands of the disciples of the three families were all silver-grade star treasures. That was the only thought in everyone's mind. The terrifying suction force coming from behind pulled the energy around them. They were like fish swimming against the current. Every step was extremely difficult, and their speed was extremely slow. The teeth-aching breaking sound caused Fu Dongku's scalp to go numb. He personally saw the warship breaking in half in front of him, splitting into two, transforming into two gigantic regiments of fire. The disciples behind him felt the pressure on them lessen and became extremely excited. Fu Dongku was not a newbie who had never been on the battlefield, but it was his first time witnessing such a bitter scene. But they were being suppressed by their wielder. It was as though the warships were delivered to their doorsteps and saved them a lot of time. Behind the fleet, Tang Tian made a hand gesture to the rest. Everyone revealed looks of excitement. All of them held onto a star treasure, but it was not activated. An umbrella-shaped light barrier opened up from his sword tip, Ursa Major Star's umbrella. A cry of surprise attracted everyone's attention. Everyone subconsciously raised their heads to look. Many of them could not help but hug their heads. They were all stunned by the scene in front of them. Outside the warships, there were many figures, and in each of their hands, a small regiment of light could be seen. It was a scheme. They were greedily absorbing energy. The star treasures that had lost their suppression began to absorb energy even more frantically, causing dazzling light scars to appear in the air, like shooting stars streaking across. These were the light scars formed by the friction of the high-speed energy beams. Very quickly, the light scars became more and more numerous. Like raindrops, they surged from all directions, rushing towards the star treasures. After Tang Tian and the rest activated the star treasures, they had been suppressing them with all their might. And after losing the suppression, the silver-grade star treasures were finally able to absorb energy from the surroundings without any obstruction. The endless energy allowed the martial spirits in the star treasures to grow at an astonishing rate. The continuously strengthening martial spirits produced an even stronger suction force. Bang! The palm-sized light regiments in their hands, upon being thrown out, would expand at an astonishing rate, and in the air, they would become the size of a basin. The light regiments had different colors, and at their edges were whirlpools of light. They were still growing at an astonishing rate. Fu Dongku's mind was blank. It was not his cowardice. It was a human's instinct. Tang Tian roared. He rushed to the front of the group. Facing the torrent, he fiercely punched out. Many of them did not care about their image and sat down. The disciples who still had strength left held onto their knees and gasped for breath. They retreated a full 60 li ka. The enemy warship was getting closer and closer, and Tang Tian became calmer. Bu Zifei's move had shocked him, but very quickly he had a whole new level of respect for Bu Zifei. That sissy has some standards. He did not blindly rely on the stronghold's defense to drag time, and was actually able to destroy one of the enemy's warships. Such a battle result was something that even Tang Tian admired. Chapter 667. Bing's expression was indifferent. He had never heard of the name Fu Dongku. Towards the so-called famed generals, he had never been interested in them. But when he saw Richard's expression, his heart was filled with disdain. Humph, this fellow is a bootlicker. He had underestimated the might of the technique. If not for them escaping quickly, if not for the few of them, the rest of them would have died. Master, the subordinate did not care about the palm print on his face, and spoke with a trembling voice. Pirates. There are pirates, it's over. Dongqi is finished. The Qi Palace is burnt. In the face of such a terrifying power, the powerful warships did not have any power to resist. They could not even struggle free from the suction force. Bu Zifei received an intense shock. His mind was in a daze. He had seen energy whirlpools before, and he had seen even bigger energy whirlpools, but he had never thought that there would be a day where such an inhuman power would be used in a war. Cough, cough, cough. Tang Tian could not be bothered. They wanted to share the profits from attacking the Shang continent. How could there be such a good thing in the world? Bing stood at the side, smoking his cigarette as though there was no one else around. Regardless if it was Tang Tian or Bing, they were not people who would repay evil with good, and everyone believed that hatred should not be left unresolved. I found it. It's the Dongqi continent. Richard's face was filled with excitement. He had been promoted to the head of intelligence and worked even harder. Fu Dongku's army is nowhere to be found. They announced that it was a long-distance training, and it just so happens to be 3 middle-scale silver-grade warships and 6 silver-grade warships. Heh, I never thought that would be the Dong Chief Fox, to be defeated by Big Boss. It is not wrong. Friends eat meat together. Enemies fight to the death. Everyone, do you want to be friends or enemies? When the rulers of the various continents received the reports from the scouts, their first reaction was disbelief. They had never heard of anyone being able to use the energy whirlpool, and the laws contained in the energy whirlpool were not high-level laws. To destroy a fleet of 3 middle-scale silver-grade warships, how big would the energy whirlpool be? The remaining 2 warships were also in a precarious situation. Richard was of course excited. The Dong Chief Fox Fu Dong Ku was a famous general, and it was a true battle achievement. He was recruited by Tang Tian and admired Tang Tian from the bottom of his heart, and felt that Fu Dong Ku losing to Tang Tian was not a humiliation to him. What? Energy whirlpool? An entire fleet of battleships destroyed? Are you kidding me? Suddenly, a subordinate stumbled into the room. His face was deathly pale, and his face was full of panic. Haha, that's true. Being defeated by me is his honor. Tang Tian was immensely proud of himself, and his nose was almost in the air. Bing, who had a black face, naturally looked at the other representatives with a gaze that was not friendly at all. Tang Tian was also shocked by the scene in front of him. He had thought that this method might work, but he didn't expect it to be so powerful. He was inspired by how the Southern Islands activated their star treasures on the Black Arrow warship, and that scene left a deep impression on him. He felt that the effect would definitely be better in the Sea of Energy, but he did not expect that it would be too good. Boom! The entire hall exploded. All the representatives stood up at once, their faces filled with shock. The surrounding people all perked up their ears. Only Bing remained indifferent and leisurely smoked his cigarette. The whirlpool was expanding at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the warships that were struggling in the whirlpool became slower and slower. The light barrier shattered. Boom! The warship exploded into a regiment of flames, and following that, the wreckage of the warship that was enveloped in the regiment of flames was sucked into the dazzling snow-white center of the whirlpool. Tang Tian could not be bothered. The East Divergent Continent, in his mind, was already classified as an enemy. To deal with an enemy, he had to be unscrupulous. Tang Tian, who was slightly impatient, did not want to beat around the bush. He stood up and looked around, not concealing the killing intent on his face. There was no resistance, no intense battle. It was a perfect sneak attack. The intense coughing broke the silence in the hall. Bing heard Tang Tian's words and was so shocked that he swallowed the smoke and choked and coughed. As he coughed, he scolded in his mind, "This idiot, how can he admit to such a thing? If I had known earlier, I would not have let this idiot speak." The 700 star treasures formed a gigantic whirlpool. The representatives from the other continents all revealed expressions of schadenfreude. They were happy to see the situation in front of them. The pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light was a huge cake, and the fewer people there were, the more everyone would get. So when Bing rejected the East Divergent Continent's participation, almost everyone agreed. But when the images of the battle were transmitted to them, everyone remained silent. Bang, bang, bang. A cold light flashed past Bing's eyes, and the smile on his face became somewhat cold. Bing finally saw how Tyrant Tang fought a battle. The East Divergent Continent that had lost Fu Dong Ku was at its weakest. How could they be the opponent of the cunning and experienced Lien Bo Jun and Shi Sen's underworld continent demonic mounts? The East Divergent Continent's army quickly crumbled, and Lien Bo Jun and Shi Sun easily found the East Divergent Continent's weakness and killed their way into the East Divergent Palace. Bu Zifei took a deep breath. He forced himself to calm down. In the darkness far away, countless eyes were spying on them. He believed that the news of the battle would spread throughout the entire southern region. No, even the entire Sacred Saint Galaxy. The first to explode were the 6 frigates. They transformed into 6 regiments of fire. The dazzling flames only lasted for a moment, and then, along with the broken hull, they were sucked into the gigantic vortex. Bing's face turned black. Ever since Tang Tian went to the White Sands continent, he did not learn anything else but to use money to smash people. He learned it without a teacher. 700 silver treasures. even in Heaven's Road, it was worth a fortune. If it was sold in the Sacred Saint Galaxy, even if it could not be compared to the fleet, it would definitely not be much cheaper. Even the representative of the East Divergent Continent did not expect that Tang Tian would actually admit to it. But the undisguised disregard caused him to feel even more suffocated, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Tang Tian had a lingering fear in his heart. Before they understood the situation clearly, no one would dare to provoke them. That meant they were temporarily safe. The mocking expressions of the people around made the representative even angrier. Pa, he gave his subordinate a slap and scolded. Is the sky falling down? What are you panicking for? Go back and reflect on yourself. Bing anxiously rushed back from the pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light. Upon seeing the energy vortex, his mouth twitched, and he squeezed out 3 words. Prodigal son. Close to 1 trillion cloud coins, a complete elite army. Such a blow to any powerhouse would be a huge blow. Bu Zifei stared blankly at the gigantic energy vortex in the distance. His limbs were ice cold, his face pale white. Big Boss actually had such a powerful weapon in his hands. The representatives of every continent, when passing through the Shang continent's estuary, would all stop in front of the gigantic energy vortex to size it up. Seeing the real thing, it was far more shocking than the images, especially when they thought about how the gigantic energy vortex was actually created by a human. Everyone's heart turned cold. The East Divergent Continent Palace was the palace of the East Divergent Continent's lord. For it to be burned, it meant that the East Divergent Continent was destroyed. The representative of the East Divergent Continent only felt his head buzzing as he was punched. The world was spinning, and after an unknown period of time, he regained his senses. He suddenly turned, his finger trembling as he pointed at Tang Tian and laughed bitterly. You are so ruthless. He was determined. When he returned, he would definitely think of a way to stop the Shang Continent's alliance. But at that moment, everyone looked at Tang Tian in fear, as though they were looking at a demon from hell. Bu Zifei only had one question in his mind. What exactly was it? But the East Divergent Continent. An entire fleet of warships, 3 silver-grade middle-sized warships, 6 silver frigates, such a luxurious and powerful arrangement, was actually completely destroyed without even being able to retaliate. Unknowingly, Bu Zifei felt sad. He knew how much manpower and resources were needed to build such a fleet, and how much time was needed. But in the blink of an eye, they were destroyed as though they were erased from the sky. In truth, such a result was out of Tang Tian's expectations, but he did not feel guilty at all. Bing felt that he had held back his energy and was prepared to go all out, but then someone told him that the game was over. That feeling was extremely stifling. After finding out that it was the East Divergent Continent, Bing sent out Shi's son and planned to disguise as pirates and give the East Divergent Continent a huge blow. Who knew that Tang Tian would be even more ferocious? Upon hearing Bing's plan to disguise as pirates, without saying a word, he found real pirates. Through Suo Bai, he contacted Lianbo Jun and used 100 black gold warship weapons to bribe the Black Sand Pirates. If not for their caution, everyone would have died here. You can't do that. The representative of the East Divergent Continent waved his hand agitatedly, his face filled with anger. Master, not good. The subordinate's voice trembled. Everyone's gaze turned over, causing the representative to feel that he had lost all face, and bellowed, Who allowed you to come in? Inside the colorful vortex, a fleet was trying their best to escape, but they were like tortoises trapped in a net, and it was extremely difficult. What was more terrifying was that the energy barrier of the warships, under the assault of the rain of energy beams, were starting to crumble. The high-speed energy beams were much more powerful than arrows, and under such a concentrated attack, nothing could escape. The most direct reaction was that Bing suddenly realized that the number of pirates near the pontoon bridge had decreased sharply, and the various continents of the southern region that originally maintained their silence all sent their representatives to the Shang continent and agreed to form an alliance. The vortex was multicolored. It was a myriad of colors, as though it was mixed with paint. The closer it was to the center, the brighter it became, and the center of the vortex was so bright that no one could look straight at it, and even the star treasures inside could not be seen clearly. The hall immediately quietened down. The various envoys looked at Tang Tian in shock. "You will regret this," the representative of the East Divergent Continent said hatefully. "No one can ignore the existence of our East Divergent Continent." Sword Forest Strongholds Hall. Tang Tian looked at him with disdain, but was not angry, and said indifferently, "Since you've done this, don't blame me for retaliating." Bu Zifei quivered, his face suddenly flushed red with excitement. He was extremely excited. Such a terrifying power could possibly change the pattern of the war, and to a general with knowledge and experience, it held too much information. What did Big Boss and the rest just throw out? That's right, it's a negotiation. All of them were actually frightened by the fool Tang Tian. They're truly spineless. What was that just now? Bing followed the pontoon bridge with difficulty. Every step was extremely difficult. But for Tang Tian, he completely used star treasures to drown the other party. The fool was extremely relaxed and carefree, while he himself was as tired as a dog. Bing was initially prepared for a bitter battle, as though he was facing a great enemy, to raise the morale, but in the end, he rushed back to negotiate. Chapter 668. Austin's smile froze on his face. The expressions of everyone in the Taurus constellation froze. No one moved. Aluin squinted his eyes. A strand of killing intent flashed past his eyes. Once again, a familiar scene appeared in his mind, and the blurry scene overlapped with the scene in front of him. Many people in the crowd tried their best to memorize all the details. The news of the Frost Mountains had long spread out, and it was said to be Sai Lei's pinnacle work. To be able to witness it personally, how could they let go of the opportunity? And compared to the other constellations, the newly emerged Ursa major constellation was even more mysterious. They had appeared out of nowhere without any warning, causing the entire Taurus constellation to be extremely curious about them. One after another, silver-armored soldiers walked out from the star door like flowing water. Someone exclaimed, and the star door in front of them lit up with a faint light aura. Screw was focused on the components in front of him. Like a child who had obtained his favorite toy, he did not even raise his head for a moment. He did not sleep or rest, and was immersed in the junk. Luckily, he was a spirit general. "Crazy, they're all crazy," Austin muttered. "I don't know what's so good about that woman. All of you go over there. Isn't it just the Ursa major constellation?" The Honorable Martial Alliance did not lose. The training ground became silent. Everyone was stunned by Screw's actions. "If even you can think of it, I think that old gangster will definitely think of it," Bradley said indifferently. Duan Mu, who was supervising the training, immediately stopped the soldiers, causing them to look at Screw, who had barged into the training grounds in shock. No one berated Screw. They all recognized the crippled spirit general, but they could not make heads or tails of what Screw was trying to do. Austin sneered. Hoping for the E-Fan family to give birth to beauties? If the E-Fan family's women were half as beautiful as their servants, the E-Fan family's doorstep would have long been trampled down. Everyone retreat 60M. I truly do not understand, cousin brother. For a woman, why would you make such a big fuss? Austin yawned. He was the son of a prince, and grew up with Bradley. The two of them were like brothers, and thus naturally spoke more casually. He mumbled, "I hope it's a beauty. If not, it will be a huge loss." Truly a pure and innocent spirit general. The others around them did not dare to join in on the conversation, but they were all mulling over the meaning of Prince Brad's words. As one of the 12 ecliptic palaces, Taurus constellation was once illustrious. Just like the golden walls of the Taurus palace, it was usually bustling with noise and excitement, but the walls of the palace had already been eroded and peeled off. Mottled cracks and cobwebs filled with dust could be seen everywhere. Silently watching the mechanical spirit weapons sprinting to and fro in the training grounds, the plowing of the soil, the intense collisions, the chase, the scene in front of him was familiar, yet foreign, causing Screw to be in a daze. Clang! He drew the silver broadsword from his back. As expected, Screw placed down the unformed object in his hands and walked to the side of the training grounds. Every day at this time, Screw would put down the mechanical components and walk to the training grounds to watch the mechanical martial artist train. Alun definitely did not want any accidents to happen. He controlled the mechanical spirit weapon and walked towards the crowd. Suddenly, he walked into the training ground. Screw walked to number 23. Do you want to win? For some reason, he felt that number 23 shouldn't lose, even though number 23 had lost 22 matches in a row and was only one loss away from his number. This is definitely Ursa Major Constellation's newest mechanical spirit weapon, Frost Mountain. Alun spoke word by word, his killing intent overflowing, enveloping the entire place. Dao Dun is much more ruthless than us. Bradley retracted the smile on his face and said, she that trash was stripped of all his positions and thrown to the countryside. Madame Chu, she was found out to have poisoned Sai Lei's mother, and after that, it was found out that when Jiang and Zhongming He's sneak attack on Three Spirit City was also related to her. The Chu family and the Honorable Martial Alliance have always been close, and Madame Chu, she has already been locked up. Because of this, the Chu family went to find the Yi Fan family, but in the end, they were directly chased out by Dao Dun, and the two families almost fought. Bradley knew that his cousin brother had a favorable impression of the Honorable Martial Alliance, and did not refute, but laughed. It's better to bet on both sides than to bet on one side. Duan Mu's reaction was faster, and immediately shouted, "Why aren't you going?" Screw threw down this sentence and turned to walk towards the pile of abandoned mechanical parts. Such treatment had never happened before in the history of the Taurus constellation and naturally attracted much criticism. In the past few years, the name Sai Lei was still unfamiliar to the Taurus constellation. Until the recent years, due to the power of the Ursa Major Constellation, Sai Lei, who was hailed as the current generation's #1 mechanical grandmaster, had become famous. And following that, the inside story of Sai Lei being born in the Taurus constellation became a hot topic, causing Sai Lei's reputation in the Taurus constellation to soar. Compared to ordinary mechanical spirit weapons that were 4 to 5 meters tall, the mechanical spirit weapons in front of them were much smaller and skinnier, with a height of roughly 2 meters, equivalent to a slightly taller person. They could not see the heavy and bulky mechanical components, as they tightly wrapped around their bodies, flowing in beautiful arcs that resembled flowing water. They were not bulky at all, but instead looked more like silver armor. The translucent wings on their backs were extremely ethereal. What was surprising was that the seemingly slender and beautiful mechanical spirit weapons seemed to be extremely heavy. Every step they took would produce a loud rumbling sound. So ruthless. Austin sucked in a breath of cold air. He suddenly thought of something, and his eyes widened. She used to be the successor of the Yi Fan family, but now that he's been banished, I haven't heard of anyone replacing him, unless that old gangster. Don't tell me he wants Sai Lei to take over his position. Austin choked. Everyone knew that the Ursa Major Constellation was currently weak, and the conflicts within the constellation were becoming more prominent. In the past few years, the aristocratic families did not produce any talented disciples, but they held the majority of the resources, and the geniuses among the ordinary people would usually leave their homes and enter the new constellations. Everyone retreat 6 DM. Number 23 looked at Screw, who was looking down at him, and replied, "Yes." Bradley laughed and did not deny it. The news of mechanical Grandmaster Sai Lei returning to her hometown to visit her family spread like the wind across the entire Taurus constellation. Old Man Fei looked at the time. It was time. Bradley laughed. "You don't have to worry about that. Sai Lei is a publicly acknowledged beauty." Alun walked out from the star door, and seeing the crowd in front of him, he frowned. The other party was too close, and at such a distance, it was easy for accidents to happen. For this mission, all of them had broken their heads. In the end, it was Alun and Chun Zilin, the golden pair, who won and obtained the honorable mission of protecting Big Sister. "Bring your mechanical weapon and follow me." Could it be that he had seen such a scene in the past? A damaged spirit general, with a mechanical spirit weapon behind him, rumbled as it stepped on the ground, following them. Austin snorted. The Honorable Martial Alliance has ruled Heaven's Road for a few hundred years. Their foundation is extremely deep, and is not something a small constellation like Ursa Major constellation can compare to. They're here. In the entire process, there was no noise at all. Only the rumbling of the mechanical weapons could be heard. If Ursa Major constellation is a small constellation, then what is our Taurus constellation? Bradley said indifferently. In the dead silence, Alun repeated it once again. His tone was unquestionable, direct and efficient, and everyone could hear it clearly. Unlike Austin, who was handsome, Bradley was more sturdy and steady, and, young barbarian king, Bradley could be considered the only consolation for the Taurus constellation in the past few years. Although he was not as dazzling as Tang Tian, Sima Shao, and the rest, but his steady style still won him praise. Before Silei left, he had warned everyone not to disturb him. But the old people in the Blood Meridian's laboratory were still worried, and they would take turns to look at Screw every day. Old Man Fei drank his tea. Looking at Screw, who was immersed in the components, he was startled. In terms of age, Screw was a spirit general from 10,000 years ago, and his age was older than everyone else in the Blood Meridian's laboratory added together. But looking at Screw, who was like a child, all the old people felt guilty and sad for not being able to cure Screw completely. What does the king mean by this? Austin was suddenly curious. This is a solid slap to the face of the Yi-Fan family. How can the old gangster of the Yi-Fan family swallow this down? He was at a loss. He shook his head and threw all the messy thoughts to the back of his mind, and once again placed his attention on the training grounds. The training grounds were undergoing a one-on-one battle, and Soldier 23 had lost again. His right rib had a weakness, which was caught by the opponent, and he was defeated after suffering a heavy blow. Soldier 23 awoke from his daze. He immediately crawled up and chased after Screw. A look of envy flashed past Duan Mu's eyes. Such fortune could only be chanced upon and not sought for. But he quickly regained his composure. Duan Mu, who had the nickname of Weapon Rack, had long become the chief instructor of Three Spirit City. He was in charge of imparting various martial techniques to the soldiers, and he was extremely satisfied with his current life. No one knew, but at this time, every day, a similar scene would surface in his mind. A silver mechanical leg extended out from the star door. Following that, a mechanical spirit weapon walked out. The aristocrats of the Taurus constellation all revealed looks of curiosity. The mechanical spirit weapon in front of them was completely different from the mechanical spirit weapons sold in the market. It was obvious that the Ursa Major constellation had specially made mechanical spirit weapons for their armies, and could not be bought outside. The Taurus constellation had sent out a large-scale welcoming team, personally led by Prince Bradley, to the star door of the Taurus constellation to welcome them. Clang! The soldiers behind him all unsheathed the silver broadswords on their backs. Although Austin was cursing in his heart, but he still forced a smile on his face. Before he could say anything, the martial artist who was walking towards them said, "Everyone, retreat 60 m." The Taurus constellation had been declining for the past few years, and there had not been any heroic figures appearing for many years. All of the proud sons and daughters of the heavens that were once looked upon favorably had either disappeared or had indulged in a life of luxury. Old Man Fei's eyes widened. The cup that was at his mouth stopped and did not move. It was Screw's first new action in the past few days. Chapter 669. He was on guard. Bullard was bewildered. The name of the Ursa Major constellation's saint unit had long shaken the world. The number of saints they possessed had already surpassed the Leo constellation and was second only to the Honorable Martial Alliance's temple. It was just that the saints of the Ursa Major saint unit were mostly independent saints, and their strengths were not high. Thus their fighting strength was ranked behind the Leo constellation and was publicly acknowledged as the third. Bang! But since this was Tang Tian's decision, Tang Cho still worked hard to complete it. Tang Tian, that bastard, did he do it on purpose? The more she thought about it, the more likely it seemed. She looked at Brad and the others with even more hostility. I still have so many experiments to do, but I have to run to the Taurus constellation to waste my life. How rude of me. That's too rude. A moment later, he finally understood what was going on. Alan turned around and nodded, indicating that he was safe. For an army that did not have any reputation outside, to actually have such luxurious equipment, did Ursa Major Constellation's talents already overflow to such an extent? The dazzling silver broadsword emitted a piercingly cold light. Even for a tough guy like Alan, being called Little Alan in public made his face flush red. He secretly cursed his bad luck, but there was nothing he could do. Big Sister must never be offended. This had long become the most unified consensus of all the armies. Everyone feared Sai Lay like a tiger. Big Sister was unreasonable and overbearing. Whoever dared to provoke her would be tired of living. There was no smile on Brad's face. He felt a little breathless. He had long known of Ursa Major Constellation strength, but personally witnessing it, he was still shocked by the astonishing power displayed by Ursa Major. The Taurus constellation was like the luxurious Taurus King carriage, beautiful on the outside but decayed, while the Ursa Major constellation was like the battle carriage, shabby on the outside but filled with vitality and vigor. He did not reveal himself, but managed to sort out the chi of the army, the surging killing intent condensed into a ball without any flaws. Expert, but an independent saint was still a saint. Bradley sighed in his heart. In my own territory, to be pointed at by the enemy, and my own performance is so clumsy, the Taurus constellation has truly fallen. His gaze was fixed on the enemy's battle formation, sweeping back and forth. Just when everyone thought that Sai Lay was about to come out, a few cold-looking fellows came out first. I'm ready. Alan didn't dare to hesitate. Time seemed to have forgotten to flow at this moment. Behind the helmet, Alan's face revealed a satisfied expression. No matter which direction the enemy came from, they would be able to completely stop them. Although Alan knew that no one would dare to do so, he would never allow himself to make such a mistake. A saint. When the car door closed, Brad and the others seemed to have woken up from a dream. All of them felt as if they had been slapped in the face, and their faces were filled with shock and disbelief. The pressure unique to a saint immediately enveloped the entire area. If we were to say that the strength of the Frost Mountain Army was shocking, then the strength of the saints was convincing. Brad took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. He already knew that the mission would not be easy to handle. Sai Lay and the Yifan family had a grudge, thinking that she would not have a good impression of the Taurus constellation. But to him, the Taurus constellation was after all an old tyrant, and was equally important to the Ursa Major constellation. If they truly offended the Taurus constellation, the Ursa Major constellation would become a powerful enemy. Brad believed that Sai Lay would not be able to see that. She would definitely look at the bigger picture and would not go overboard. Wearing high heels hurts my feet, Sai Lay scolded in her heart. The welcoming team that had just woken up from a dream retreated in panic. All of them were in a sorry state, like a group of scattered soldiers. Brad could not help but look at the army that seemed to be nailed to the ground, the army that was as strict as a forest of swords. His face was burning up. The disparity was too big. When a few of them appeared, their gazes slowly swept across the entire field. Seeing the carriage that Alan and the rest had prepared, Austin and the rest revealed looks of disdain. Tang Cho then handed the mission to them with ease, with the intention of tempering them. Crack, crack, crack. Everyone's heart trembled. They all lowered their heads, their faces revealing respectful looks. Alan was the genius young man of Sky Marshal Wolf Academy, and had the air of a great general, although he was usually gentle and quiet. But in battle, he was brave and ferocious. Paired with the taciturn but quick-witted Chen Zilin, the two of them had been competing in Ursa Major Constellation and could be said to be in the limelight. Bradley stared at Sai Lay in a daze. Compared to the image, she was much more beautiful. That damn Tang Tian. Behind him, the gold-shining Taurus King carriage was waiting quietly. All of them were actually saints. Sai Lay ignored him and turned to ask Alan, "Little Alan, where's the carriage?" The sound of teeth chattering came out from Austin's mouth. His face contorted in shock. Little Alan, born in Lupus constellation, he was poor since young, and unexpectedly entered Sky Marshal Wolf Academy. But he was never complacent. He cherished his current life, which was something that he did not even dare to think about in the past. Suddenly, a bright light entered his vision, and he could not help but look. We are actually welcoming such a boorish, impolite, pretentious woman. The curses that came out of his ears made Bradley even more upset. He bellowed, "Shut up." Alan felt weird. How could the Taurus constellation take things too hard to provoke Big Sister? Ursa Major constellation had always been recruiting Aquarius martial artists, but there were only a few that responded. The Aquarius constellation's business atmosphere was dense, and the Aquarius martial artists were generally wealthy, so they naturally disdained the attractive treatment of the Ursa Major constellation. The star door became bright again, and Bradley, who had recovered from the shock, could not help but look at the star door, his heart filled with curiosity. Silei's name was already known to everyone in the Taurus constellation, but Bradley knew even more. He had even seen Silei's image, and knew that she was a great beauty. Aren't they independent saints? The aura that the 8 of them are releasing, why is it even more astonishing than the few old fellows living in seclusion in the Taurus palace? Bradley warned himself that Silei might be doing it on purpose, but for some reason, his chest felt as though something was stuck there. Rumble, rumble. His gaze stared at the simple carriage. It was a simple and unadorned silver carriage. It was a commonly used battle carriage, mainly used to transport soldiers and resources. Not every army had an Aquarius martial artist. Unless there was an Aquarius martial artist, then the silver Aquarius cabinet and the like would be able to display their greatest use. If not, the carriage would be able to display their greatest use. With a total of 8 saints accompanying them, such a large formation, it was completely able to intimidate thieves and thieves. Truly a group of country bumpkins. Dressed in a black evening gown, it was like a blooming black, eerie epiphyllum, the flawless outline. The sharp chin made her face look extremely exquisite and beautiful. Bright red lips, delicate skin, fiery red wavy hair casually draped over her shoulders, revealing a trace of indolence and casualness. Under her long eyelashes, the pair of ice blue eyes were extremely enchanting, yet revealed an unapproachable coldness. The 3 moles under her left eye added a bit of charm and sexiness to the coldness. Austin's mouth was wide open. He stared blankly at the soldiers in front of him, brimming with killing intent. The cold killing intent enveloped him. In that moment, he felt as though he was placed in ice and snow. A layer of dense goosebumps appeared on his skin. Silei did not have any intention to give them any face, and completely treated them as air. Everyone present was stunned. Everyone had heard of Silei's beauty, but personally witnessing it, the impact they received was even more intense. Even Austin forgot about his fear. He opened his mouth wide and looked at Silei with a silly look, saliva dripping from the corner of his mouth. Thinking about Tang Tion's plan to link the budget of the mechanical sector laboratory to his sleep, Silei clenched his teeth in hatred. Tang Chon knew of Silei's importance to the Ursa Major constellation, and in truth, he did not approve of Silei returning to the Taurus constellation. To him, although the Taurus constellation was also part of the 12 ecliptic palaces, but their strength was already unable to contend against the Ursa Major constellation, and might as well flatten them and not take the risk. There was a special person hidden amongst the soldiers, and that was the true core of the enemy. Bradley was extremely shocked. He had never heard of the Frost Mountain Army in front of him. It was most likely a newly formed army of the Ursa Major constellation. To actually have such an expert, the leader naturally released a valiant and disdainful aura. He should be the leader of the Frost Mountain Army, and the one hidden in the group should be his vice general. Beautiful Grandmaster Silei. Bradley stepped forward and bowed, and said respectfully, "Bradley has received orders from the king to welcome Grandmaster's arrival. The carriage is already prepared, and will listen to your orders." Who does she think she is? All the noises came to an abrupt stop. Everyone couldn't help but look at Brad. In their opinion, His Royal Highness must have been angered by Silei's actions. Silei did not even look at them. She walked forward slowly. Her voice was as cold as a cold spring on an ice mountain. Is the carriage ready?" One after another, silver figures, a few small groups moved forward like lightning. The dazzling changes were like mercury spilling onto the ground, in the stifling atmosphere and the trembling of the mountains. That doesn't make sense. She doesn't even have us in her eyes? Does she think that in front of us, the Taurus constellation, she has anything to be proud of? Who is stronger? Bradley could not be sure, but he had to admit that the Taurus constellation's army no longer had the temperament to contend against them. In front of the dazzling Taurus King carriage, the battle carriage was truly poor and shabby. Many of them were even more proud, as expected of a group of nouveau riche. In front of the aristocratic families with long histories, they have no place to hide. Bradley's heart did not feel good, but he maintained a smile on his face. He raised his hand to indicate that he had no enmity, and slowly walked forward to Austin's side. He grabbed Austin, who was trembling all over, causing Bradley's heart to feel even more dismal. He shouted out, "Everyone retreat." He could not help but think about the Honorable Martial Alliance Army, which was also one of the strongest armies in Heaven's Road. The Honorable Martial Alliance Army was similarly organized, but the difference was the Honorable Martial Alliance Army had an arrogant aura, while the Frost Mountain Army in front of him was filled with killing intent. But is she crazy? At that moment, he was suspecting if his deduction was wrong. Silei's performance was completely out of his expectations. Under the complacent gazes of the people, Silei boarded the carriage without hesitation. One was like a skilled aristocrat. The other was like a ruthless outlaw who fought for his life. Although it looked like it was a calm and tranquil arrangement, Bradley knew the difficulty of it. A little bit of reasonableness, continuously stacking up, would unknowingly pull up the advantage, and such an enemy was the most terrifying. Such a deputy general could only be found by chance, and not sought after. They were like a magnifying glass, able to completely display the general's bravery.